It's not Christmas until Hans Gruber's crash the party at Nakatomi Plaza. That's right, today we begin Die Hard season. So join us as we discuss the ultimate everyman action hero, his independent wife, her yuppie co-worker, a Twinkie-obsessed cop, and dare I say, one exceptional thief. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
Welcome to the party, pal.
This is a movie podcast, and we are kicking off a new season. Today, we are kicking off a Die Hard season, which is just nicely timed, so the first two episodes are before Christmas, and then the rest of the franchise is after Christmas when they're not Christmassy anymore.
I cannot express to you the joy on Pete's face when he first saw how that lined up on our schedule. He's like, it's perfect.
I mean, honestly, it's kind of why I picked Die Hard for this year. Because I was like, oh, the first two will be Christmas episodes. Anyway. Yes, Die Hard. I mean, what explanation do I have to give for Die Hard? Everyone knows Die Hard. We will start spoiler-free, as we always do, but I feel like very few of you need the spoiler-free section.
Yeah.
But
Die Hard's the one with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, right?
Ha ha ha. It'll give us some structure and whatnot, but if you are enjoying the show, do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch if you do. And of course, you can support all the content over at Patreon, where you can get some bonus shows every month, but I'll tell you more about them at the end of the episode. So, Die Hard is, I'll just say it's probably the best pure action movie ever made. What do I mean by pure action movie? I just mean, if you take out science fiction and things like that, like if you're just talking just straight up action movie, I don't think it gets better than Die Hard. So I'm just going to start off with that statement. I'm assuming you'd seen this before, but sometimes you surprise me, so I should probably ask that question.
I don't know how to answer this without being ridiculed.
I
have, okay, so collectively, I have seen this movie before.
Whoa,
however,
collectively,
because I have never actually sat down and purposefully watched it beginning to end all at once. I have only ever caught it in most of the movie-sized chunks when it's airing on basic cable. So I have seen the whole of the movie, but I never sat down and watched it beginning to end once through, especially not without 700 commercial breaks peppered throughout.
Okay. But I mean, you were still familiar with most of the beats of Die Hard. Yes.
I was a little bit confused when it got to Yippee-Ki-Yay because I thought the line was melon farmer, but I was way off on that one.
See, I get that joke, but I want to point out how American that joke is, because other countries don't have this dubbing over swearing with silly words.
Yeah.
That's not a thing elsewhere.
To be fair, there was a period in my life where I was like, that's dumb and I hate it, but now I've grown fond of it. I think it's the stupidest thing that we do, but I love it.
I can't imagine having movies be ruined with stupid dubbing put over the top.
I can't imagine the fact that they think no one's gonna notice. Like, they do it, and it's just like, you clearly he's cursing there. Like, do you want your kids running around yelling melon farmer instead?
Yeah, people are just gonna be like, what does that mean? What did it mean, melon farmer? What are they talking about?
Why do you say melon farmer, Mom and Dad? I have many questions.
Dear. So yes, Die Hard, Bruce Willis, Nakatomi Plaza, Christmas Eve.
Yes.
All the good stuff. Which I did look up the real building, just because I was curious what the actual floor count was on it. It's a 34-story building, which actually lines up with what happens in the movie based on like how far the roof is from the 33rd floor, which is used primarily. The poster does say 40 stories, but I guess they thought a round number would just sound better.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. If you have to give a story count, saying 34 is definitely not something that's like punchy. You say 40 floors of death. That makes more sense.
Yeah. 34 is pretty tall, though. I don't think I've ever been in a building that's higher than like 15. So, I mean, 34 sounds monstrous to me.
I mean, to be fair, out in LA, that does sound very monstrous, but you go to New York and that's barely anything.
Oh, yeah. But you ain't catching me in the Empire State Building. Okay?
That's fair.
All right.
I don't know what that... I definitely have been in buildings that tall, but I don't know if I've gone up that high. I feel like every time I've gone, it's been like, I'm on the 5th floor. I have no reason to go higher.
Yes. You want to be on a floor where the ladders from the fire trucks can reach you if things go wrong.
Yes.
That's my stance on it. I watched the Towering Inferno.
I was going to say, how do we tie that? Go check out our episode on Towering Inferno, where all the things went wrong.
Yes, exactly. And that was like what was that maybe in that movie? It was like 100 stories or something stupid.
It was close to that. It was ridiculously tall.
Yeah.
Towering Inferno size. It says 138 stories.
That sounds right. 130 is ringing a bell.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, there you go. Anyway, Die Hard. Yes, my favorite Christmas movie as well. May I add?
I actually put money on that. I was telling my fiance, I said, I guarantee you Pete's going to bring up the point of this being a Christmas movie.
Well, I wanted, this debate is, tiring to even hear now.
Yes, it is.
But I want to just say one thing on it, right? All of a sudden, one year, there was just a group of people who decided to try and argue that Die Hard wasn't a Christmas movie. All the people that were happy thinking it was a Christmas movie never had to talk about it being a Christmas movie. It was just a Christmas movie. But all of a sudden, it was challenged by elitists.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but from my exposure, and mind you, I was not that deep into it, but from my exposure, it was the opposite side, where when I first saw the discourse, it was people defending that it was a Christmas movie. I didn't see the challengers except in response to that.
Oh, it was challenged. It was definitely challenged.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, it's a Christmas movie. What sort of nonsense is this?
I mean, I saw one argument that basically put it down to, it really comes down to whether your definition of Christmas movie includes the feelings of, joyful inclusiveness and love amongst your fellow kin. If that's a requirement, Die Hard probably doesn't fit that bill. But otherwise, yeah, it's a Christmas movie.
I may argue it does fit that bill, frankly.
Yes, I felt so much love as John McClane went through and started shooting up all the people around.
John McClane and Al Powell are best friends for life after this movie, okay?
I'm curious to see. I mean, I don't think so, and I don't want you to spoil it. I don't want anyone to spoil it, so keep your comments to yourself. But I'm curious to see whether or not Al comes back in future movies at all.
Oh, so you've not seen any of the sequels?
I remember a fountain scene from, I believe it's Die Hard 3. That's correct. All I've got. That is the only thing in my memory.
Okay. All right. I won't sing all 4 verses of the Die Hard song now. I don't want to spoil anything.
All right.
Yes, but there is a Die Hard song by Guys Night. Go and look it up. Everyone else, not David.
Nope. I'll listen to it after everything's done.
The best line of the song though was they were overzealous when they shot Ellis. Anyway, so
true.
I guess that's a spoiler for this one. Sorry, folks. Just in case you've not seen Die Hard.
I mean, you could have played it off. That could have been something for Die Hard 3.
Actually, yeah, there's an Ellis in this one. That's whatever. Look, right.
We're talking about Ellis's twin brother, also named Ellis.
So, yeah, I mean, David, did you like Die Hard?
I thought it was pretty neat. It's a nifty little movie. I really like when a director can come in with a small little project, doesn't require much of a budget at all, and just really gets to tell this intimate, emotional story. I mean, it's go ahead.
It's about a man rekindling his romance with his wife on Christmas Eve. It's a heartfelt tale.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's espousing the evils of capitalism amongst the Christmas season. No doubt. No, I obviously I knew about it going in. I know Die Hard. Who doesn't know Die Hard? It's absolutely... I'm going to say I agree with you in that it is absolutely one of the best pure action films, period. I don't think I've seen enough to be able to definitively say the best, but I think that, it's definitely a contender up there for me. I think what really gets me about it is it's just absolute perfect pacing. This movie is 2 hours and 15 minutes long, and you are enraptured every single minute of the way. At no point does it ever feel like a slog at any point. It doesn't feel like we're retreading old ground. It always keeps the tension and the action and all that just pumping the entire time. Adding on top of that, I will always give credit for scripts that are smart with being able to set up their payoffs in a way that I don't see it coming, in a way that is very natural to the story, and then being able to pull that up later and be like, see, look, we did this. And I'm like, oh, you're right. I didn't see it coming. So that happens dozens of times in this script. They do a great job at that.
You say that, and all I can see is the smug face on Ellis as he goes, show him the watch. It's a Rolex.
Yeah.
It's a
absolutely.
Rolex. Anyway.
But no, it's a fantastic movie. I can't speak any less of it, and I'm sure that we're going to spend this entire review just going like, oh man, remember that part where this happens? So cool.
I mean, you know what? I've seen Die Hard a lot over my life. I've even talked about it critically before, which is interesting because sort of forcing myself to look at it and look for more layers and whatnot, and then going in again with those layers already in mind. So you kind of like solidify your arguments as to why certain things work the way they do, or just extra little things that make it one of the best action movies of all time. And I think one of the things that sticks out for me on my viewings of Die Hard in the last, I don't know, 5 or so years, you know, this last chunk of my life, is that, because I see Die Hard probably once every other year, right?
Okay.
I'm not.
It's not a Christmas staple yet.
I mean, it is. It's as close as to anything that I have as a staple. But I'm just not someone who watches the same movie every year at the same time. Like I'm just not that person. That even you know, Halloween, every other Halloween I probably watch Halloween, but not every year.
You trade off between the Rob Zombie one and the original one each year.
I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. But what sticks out to me watching it, because it's very easy to go into this movie, and I feel like the common perception of Die Hard is that it's the ultimate guy movie because it's an action film, and Bruce Willis versus you know, group of terrorists by himself, and there's explosions and there's all sorts of things. But what sticks out to me watching this movie is part of what makes John McClane such a likable hero in this film is the fact that every single other character who's supposed to be a good guy, right? Well, not Al, but like all the people who are supposed to be in charge of doing things on the outside. I'm thinking the lieutenant character who shows up and is in charge for a good bit, and certainly the FBI agents who show up at a certain point, is that they all think that they're hot stuff. They all think that they're badasses, to the point where the lieutenant at one point, when he's calling for a SWAT team to go in, even though it's a bad idea, he says kick ass. That's how he gives the order to go in. And there's this sense of like, we think we're tough, we think we're badasses because we have guns. And I feel like, despite the fact that obviously John McClane is using guns, there's even the famous ho ho ho, I got a machine gun. Despite that, while John McClane is cracking jokes, and often it's strategic because he's doing it to get under the villain's skin and whatnot, he's always taking it seriously. He never makes light of what's actually dangerous. So he never feels like, he's always trying to do the right thing. He's always trying to actually take everything seriously. And these characters who don't take things seriously are made to look like absolute fools, right? The lieutenant, the FBI, like the FBI especially, I mean, I won't get into it because it's more spoilery, but like there is just some great cuts in this movie from the villains being ecstatic, cut straight to the FBI guys going, oh, I bet they're shaking in their boots right now. And it just makes them look so incompetent, and it feels more like a critique of someone who thinks, oh, guns are cool and we're badasses because we have guns. Like, this movie feels like it's challenging those people, as opposed to, even though I'm sure most of those types of people in the real world probably love this movie for all the other reasons, but that is absolutely there, and it's something that's really stuck out to me more as I've watched it in recent years. And I think what makes it the perfect bow on all of it is when you bring in Hans Gruber into the mix. Because Hans Gruber, obviously Alan Rickman is phenomenal as Hans Gruber. He's so memorable, so many great lines, all the rest of it. We'll get into all in spoilers. But one of my favorite things is that the only one in this movie that matches John McClane's intelligence and strategy is Hans Gruber. And Hans Gruber takes things seriously. He's smart. He's got things planned out. Even when his own men are saying, "Oh, this is bad and this is bad," he's keeping it calm. He knows what the game plan is. He knows what the he's not letting his temper get the best of him. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say that ultimately the good guy is going to win at the end. So ultimately, the reason why Hans Gruber loses is because he gives up being Hans Gruber and he has to act like John McClane for a second, but he's not John McClane, and that's why he loses. I think that's perfect.
Yeah, no, I think this movie is almost a response, and obviously I don't know exactly what was going on in Hollywood at the time, but I think it's almost a response to the sort of very black and white, like Schwarzenegger, Stallone sort of movies that were coming out around that time. Not them directly, but like that style of action hero where it's very much guy runs in, he's in the absolute right, bulletproof, able to go in, take out all these terrorists, and the terrorists are always easily identifiable. They're easily on the bad side of morality. Like there's no questioning anything here. And this movie comes in and it shows you not only a villain that is a bit more competent, a bit more unique in the way that they act, and a bit more interesting, I would say, than just a random group of, oh, they're just random terrorists, we don't need to worry about them. And then you also add in the fact that John McClane is not bulletproof. He gets injured, like severely, and he is way out of his element in a lot of aspects here, and it's only his ingenuity that gets him out of it, not his ability to just run and gun.
And I would add on to that is that the fighting style, whenever he gets into a fight, it feels messy. It feels like two guys grappling and trying to get the upper hand. Like it feels violent, but it doesn't feel like someone's pulling off fancy moves. It feels like no, he's trying to grab what he can and like choke what he can or snap what he can or throw a punch where he can. But it feels rough and tumble and I mean this in a good way. It feels unchoreographed.
There's one fight in this movie. I won't say which character, but the person that John is fighting starts doing like a few karate chops and does like a little like Karate Kid style kick to the face of John at one point, and it stood out to me because I felt that it was like really choreographed. But then John immediately responds with putting the dude in a headlock and just like grunting obscenities at him, just like I'm just gonna kill you. Like you're right, it just feels like a bar fight pretty much. He's doing anything he can to survive instead of doing this whole long ass fight scene to try to show why he's the better fighter.
Yeah, that's consistent throughout. You know, he's the everyman hero. He's not unstoppable, bulletproof, like you said. At least not in this one.
Oh, I'm sure it devolves. I'm sure.
Yeah. And I don't think it devolves too quickly either, but certainly I remember thinking when the fourth one came out that, all of a sudden he's somehow tanking a lot more in this one.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite things about this movie as it goes on is he starts off in a white tank top, but by the end of the movie, that tank top is like nothing. You can't see. Yeah, you can't see any of the white anymore. It's just completely covered in dirt and blood and sweat and whatever else is mixed in there.
There was a point where I was not paying attention to the tank top, and I saw that it was like a dark brown, and I was like, did he change shirts at some point? And then I just quickly clicked through the movie. I'm like, no, it just gradually got there. Oh God, that's all of someone's blood on there.
That is an attention to detail. Like the costume department in this movie were really, because they probably shot it fairly out of order, and I have to imagine the costume department really had to keep track of, where are we in the timeline with this scene? Like how discolored is that tank top in this moment? We have to think about that constantly. So yeah, you've got that. But yeah, I mean, cast wise, Bruce Willis and Hans Gruber are the two that are sticking out more than anyone else. Of course, is the hero and the villain. This is the movie that I think most people think of when they think of Bruce Willis. It's obviously he's done lots of big movies. Like he's a pretty prolific actor. So certainly 80s all the way through the 90s and maybe a little bit into the early 2000s. Mid 2000s he kind of started to transition into doing more of your direct to video schlock and whatever, and he kind of stayed in that line for the rest of his career. Obviously he's retired now due to health issues. Right. But this is very much as kind of the first thing I think of anyway when I think of Bruce Willis, and it's hard not to, because he isn't Arnold, he isn't Sly, he isn't even Van Damme or like any of those guys. He does feel like a more of a normal schlub in a lot of ways, and that's kind of what defines John McClane. So
Yeah, I mean, I would say this does seem to be the first thing I think of with Bruce Willis, but I can absolutely understand the argument depending on the kind of genres you're into. Like Sixth Sense would be understandable as well as the default Bruce
I
Willis
could see,
movie.
yeah, I could see that for a certain sect of people. Yeah,
I would possibly argue Pulp Fiction, but I think if you're the type of person who's into Pulp Fiction, you're also into Die Hard. I don't think that's not a Venn diagram. That's just two circles overlapping each other entirely.
I also think that's a more of an ensemble, so that's not Bruce Willis's movie in the way that Die Hard is.
Right. Yeah.
And then Alan Rickman, like I think the art of a villain is something that I feel like this movie kind of shows off, and I don't think I appreciated it when I was super young, like just how important he was to making this movie work, and the way he plays off, the way he gets pissed at McClane and all that stuff. There's little flourishes in his performance, little ticks, the way he kind of, I don't even know how to describe this, but the way he kind of sort of purses his lips open a lot for some of his words, just to sort of give them an extra bit of this visual oomph. There's a moment in the film where he shoots a gun just in the air, just at the ceiling, but he sort of does it in this way where he kind of slides out the door, and it just has this sort of gracefulness to it. It's just like, all right, you're a stage actor. Like you're putting a little bit of pizzazz into this, but not so much that it sticks out in like a distracting way, just enough to give these little flourishes that just make moments memorable. So, and he's doing a German accent, of course, for the movie, and he's not German. So, fair play, because. Yeah, it was weird because I'm so familiar with his normal accent, or at least I assume that he's a British accent actor. That's what I've seen as his default most of the time. Yeah, I'm sure he's English. Yeah.
So I'm so used to that. But then when he's introduced, all of his other workers, the other terrorists there, all have very heavy German accents. They are very heavy. In fact, I think most of them just speak German most of the time. Like, he's the only one who spends a lot of the time in English.
Most of them. There's one guy who's on the front desk who I'm pretty sure he's like American, and then there's an Asian guy who I doubt he's German.
I didn't hear a word he said though, so it could
I don't think you never hear him speak. To be fair, but I'm going just based on the fact that he's Asian. I'm assuming he's not German, but
that's fair. I guess when I say it, it's most of the muscle, because you also have Theo on the IT side of things.
Oh, of course, yeah, and he's clearly American, yeah. It's all the long blonde hair guys.
Right.
There's one guy who I don't know how to describe it, because the one thing to describe him would be a scene, which would be a spoiler, I guess. But there's one guy who came across more as a Latino to me, but
okay, I don't recall him.
No, it was just the way he was dressed. He had like a Scarface kind of like outfit on, not a suit, but the way the shirt was sort of unbuttoned and the dark hair.
I just don't even remember the character. So when we get to that
doesn't
scene, mention him, and I'll just be like, oh, okay, yeah.
Anyway, I think it's like obviously clearly Germans are in charge of this group, but it's a bit of a hodgepodge of people. But yeah, there's a variety of characters here. We also have John's wife, played by Bonnie Bedelia.
Yep.
Holly McClane or Gennaro, depending on what you want to go with.
That's again, like, not to spoil too much, but like that was one of those things that got me so hard, is this idea that she's going by her maiden name rather than McClane. And obviously it's good characterization. It really sets up where their relationship's at, but it's a stealth thing that comes up not once, not twice, but like 3 times over the course of this movie, of impacting the plot, of how it comes up. And it's just like, oh, her not going by her married last name, or her going by Gennaro, affects how this all plays out.
There we got Reginald Vell Johnson as Sergeant Al Powell, who's like the good cop on the outside that John talks to over the walkie-talkie.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Also known as Carl from Family Matters, who also is a cop, so it was very strange to see that carry over here.
Yeah, Family Matters never really made it to the UK, so that's
fine.
That's lost on me. You got Paul Gleason as the lieutenant who's on the outside. You got Devereaux White as Argyle, the limo driver, who, like, Doesn't have a ton of scenes, but he's very memorable.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could just mention it now. That was probably my one critique character-wise. It felt like everyone had a really defined role of what they're doing. Even when it came down to like the thugs for Gruber, it felt like they were very much counting them down. They had specific parts they were filling. Argyle was the one guy who I kept expecting to come back in a bigger way, and he just never really did.
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. 'Cause I'm just like I've seen this movie like 50 times, starting from when I was a kid. So it's just the way it is to me.
Right.
It's hard to critique a plot choice like that. Yeah, William Atherton as a journalist. Apparently, his name is Thornburg. I never caught his name. He's just a journalist, or the reporter maybe. So yeah, this is Dickless from Ghostbusters.
And he has exactly one role he's ever been typecast in.
Oh, he's just as much of a prick in this as he was in Ghostbusters.
It's just the worst. How do you, like, as this actor, how do you wake up in the morning knowing that all of your best roles are you just being the guy that everyone wants to punch?
Oh, dear. Yeah, and then I suppose Ellis, we have to mention Hart Boschner, who plays him. Who, funnily enough, like I only know him from one other movie, and he's the hunky guy in Supergirl, and that's all.
Okay,
that's the only other thing I know him from.
Fair enough.
And it took me a long time to realize that was him because he doesn't have a beard in that movie, so I didn't know it was him for a long time until someone pointed it out, and I went, "Wait a minute, that's Ellis from Die Hard." Oh, this is weird.
Yeah, I mean, the only place I recognize Ellis from is the last time I went shopping for a car. He was absolutely the salesman.
He is a yuppie. That is what his role is. He is a yuppie who clearly has the hots for Holly and maybe a cocaine problem as well.
Is it a problem, though? Or is it the only way he manages to close these sales?
So, anywho, the spoilers, I mean, let's not dance around anything anymore. Let's get into things.
I mean, okay, the one thing I did want to say beforehand, it's always the last thing we close out before spoilers, is the score for this movie, the soundtrack, however you want to call it, it very heavily uses Ode to Joy. And that's, it comes up frequently throughout the movie. But what I really, really like about it is not only... I'd say frequently because it's a minor retuning of it is the villain's theme. It's Hans Gruber's theme is this little... It's like a minor key retuning of it that makes it like this overarching thing that whenever they play the song, the villains are usually doing something at the same time. So whether or not you have the minor key or the major key can tell you whether it's like a good or a bad thing at any point.
I mean, fair enough. I like there's two times where it's noticeably Ode to Joy though. You hear like a low rumble of it when you first see the vault, and then you hear it properly, obviously, much later on in the film, and the memorable scene where it plays. Yeah,
but like as they're coming into Nakatomi Plaza, you can hear the like dun 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 dun, and then it goes down to a lower note where obviously in the normal song it would have gone up. So it's playing on the same motifs the way through, and it really keeps that song in your head. So when you get to the bigger moment where it plays again, it hits, you feel it.
Yeah. So any other thoughts on the score? I mean, did you like they did that, or?
No, I mean, I liked it. I thought it was a very clever way of using, obviously, a very often used and old piece of music, and it's reworking it for something that felt uniquely for this movie. The only other thing to notice that I don't think it's too often. I think there's only like 3 instances where they just use explicitly Christmas music as the score. I don't have a problem with it, but it was kind of weird when you think about it from a meta standpoint of like, this is a hardcore action movie, and how does it end? With Let It Snow. Like, I don't know, it just seemed a little weird to me.
No, I mean, the juxtaposition is a thing.
Oh yeah,
that's it's very
I'm not
intentional.
saying it's a bad thing. I just think it was like, if you look at it on paper, you say like, what is the soundtrack to Die Hard, and you say mostly Christmas carols. I don't think most people would get that.
There's not a lot of them, though. Like,
no, there's not a lot, but it is the score. It is the soundtrack. Besides just random orchestra stings.
Yeah, but this is such a weird like argument you're giving me here. It's mostly a score, right? 90% of the music in this is score.
Right. But I'm saying like nothing that is like a tune, nothing that is like it's going on to a CD or anything like that, or it comes up over and over again. There's no like the fight theme from Die Hard, you know?
I mean, there's flourishes that I remember, little kind of stringed bits and things like that.
Maybe you do then. I didn't get any of that. The only thing I got as a recurring thing was the Ode to Joy villains motif, but that's all I picked up on.
Oh, sure, but like, I feel like you've got this really binary idea in your head of what a score is, by the sounds of it, because just because it's not something you can hum or has like a main theme does not mean that it's not a score. It just means it's not doing that.
I recognize it's a score, absolutely. I recognize that there is music being played, and it doesn't have to be something that's hummed. But like, I don't know. I just, in terms of memorability, when you walk out of this, it's going to be a bunch of Christmas Carol songs. And all I'm saying, I'm not saying it's weird, or not. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying it's weird that an action movie, possibly the biggest action movie ever by some standards, is Christmas Carol filled. I don't know. On paper, that just seems weird to me.
I don't think it's weird at all. I'm pretty sure it's not the only one.
All right. Well, fair enough.
I'm pretty sure Lethal Weapon's full of Christmas carols too, and that's even less of a Christmas movie.
I haven't seen that either, so there you go.
It feels like the most. I don't know. Like Christmas carols are genre-wise, they're agnostic. You can put them in anything and it works. You can put them in a horror movie, and it's kind of like a. Oh, something creepy is about to happen, so it's almost uncomfortable hearing the Happy Christmas Carol. You can put them in an action movie, and it's kind of ironic. You can put them in an actual heartfelt Christmas thing, and it's just played straight. You could do it in any genre, pretty much.
That's fair.
So
I don't know. We're for behind the scenes. We're recording this just before Thanksgiving. We're getting a little bit of a lead time on this, and as soon as Thanksgiving hits, I know I'm not going to be able to stop hearing Christmas carols. So it's weird to get a lead time on that.
Yeah, I can't imagine this movie not ending with "Let It Snow." It's it's especially with all the falling paper, which is meant to emulate snow.
You know? I did notice that. I was like, oh, okay, I get it.
Well, it's LA. They can't have
how much
actual
of that's
snow.
Asbestos at the same time, I wonder.
It's paper. What are we talking about?
No, I'm saying they just. Okay, no spoilers, but there are explosions at the building to some extent.
Sure.
Some of those floors have asbestos in them.
But they still used asbestos in the late 80s?
So. I don't think it was
changed yet.
I think that building must have been around for at least a decade.
Oh no, it was new.
It was new?
It was new, because that was part of why they used it, is because it wasn't being used yet. It was still, and they kind of worked that into the plot by saying it wasn't finished. That's why there was several floors that are just, under construction still.
Fair enough. I can't find any exact dates for when we started phasing out asbestos.
What a weird thing to be Googling.
Yeah.
I assumed it was further back than that, but I mean, I could be wrong. That's just an assumption.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah. Weird.
Anyway, spoilers?
Yeah, spoilers. Yeah. I tried to put out spoilers like 6 minutes ago, and you hit me with, isn't it weird there's Christmas carols in this Christmas movie?
Look, I put in my thing about Ode to Joy thing, and then you said anything else about the soundtrack. I felt put on the spot to say something. So I'm putting that on you. And apparently the EPA said in 1989, no more asbestos.
Oh, 1 year after this. Okay.
Yep. So they were not up to code. Rebuild.
That's fair. It was a brand new building, but yeah, just before that deadline. I don't know. Mm-hmm. That said, though, California tends to be a bit ahead of these nationwide laws. It's entirely possible locally it was already a no-no, but we're not going to research that. That's too much effort.
No, absolutely.
Far too much effort. Anyway, yes, Die Hard. Spoilers from henceforth. You have been warned. Mm-hmm. So, yes, there's so many little lines in this movie that every time they crop up, I find myself smiling. Ladies that sound like I'm ordering an effing pizza. That one sticks out to me.
I actually thought you were going to give me crap at the beginning of this review for the line I picked of "Welcome to the Party, Pal," because there are like 100 lines to pick from, and I was like, I I mean, I don't know if that one's a big one, but it
No,
felt
it
right.
is. It also fits contextually with it being a welcome
Mm.
to the show kind of thing. No, I mean, there's that line. One of my favorites is Gruber's, Theo, you asked for a miracle. I give you the FBI.
Yeah.
Such a
I will give
quotable movie.
who is the writer on this movie, actually. I got to give them credit.
The
Roderick Thorpe, Jeb Stewart, and Stephen D'Souza.
Well, it's based on a book, so one or two of those will be the book author.
Gotcha. Well, I cannot be asked to find out who, so
Yeah.
good job to all three of you.
Yeah, yeah, I never really talked about the director, actually. We should probably talk about the director a bit before we get further into this. John McTiernan, who, this is probably his best movie. That said, though, he did also do Predator, so it's not like he's not a one-hit wonder by any means either. He got a couple of good. He also did Die Hard 3, so that'll be coming up
Okay.
in a bit. But
Fair enough.
he is a director that sadly, by the time you hit the 2000s, seemed to just the 2002's Rollerball remake was a travesty. Don't know what was going on there. So he did kind of go flying downward very quickly. But if you look at his 80s and 90s stuff, there is some action gold.
I was going to say, man, Predator, Die Hard, Hunt for Red October.
And don't
Just
forget,
boom, boom, boom.
Last Action Hero.
Yeah. He did Medicine Man in the middle. I'm unfamiliar with that one.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but
Yeah.
still though,
Good on him.
yeah, very solid director. Really understands how to shoot action, how to use the geography so you understand where two people are in a fight scene or a shootout scene or something like that. Understand the logistics so that you know how close or narrowly they are to get into the exit or whatever it might be.
Right.
There's a lot of that going on. It was something. I mean, Predator was a great example of that as well, because so many people have tried to do cheap movies in the forest or jungle, and they're so painful to watch because pacing's awful. They don't know how to use it. It's kind of like making 12 Angry Men, right? That sounds like, oh, anyone could be able to do that because you can just go into a room and shoot it. But it turns out you actually have to have a director who knows how to keep the room interesting. Same with a jungle or forest, and that's kind of what Predator proved for McTiernan, is that he knew how to always make it compelling, always make it feel like the place is alive around him. And I won't go as far to say the Nakatomi Plaza feels like a character in this. I wouldn't say that, but it does. You do get the sense of place. You get the sense of various locations in the building. You get a sense of just kind of there's a great moment right at the start when McClane's in the limo with Argyle and they're driving towards the building, and there's just a couple of shots where it looks over at the building and the distance, and it's kind of almost ominous, right? Because it's just this looming thing in the distance and you can see it, and it's just a good little bit because it kind of gets you hyped for this is where the movie's all going to be. This is ground zero, and the character's not quite there yet, but he's going to it. It's a really simple little thing to build some excitement. And they kind of do some other little bits like that, where they kind of show that you can see this building from, even when Al gets the call later, before he gets into his car, he walks over and just looks down the street and kind of sees it looming, in the distance.
Yeah, I think there's a reason that all the posters and the DVD covers that are the most famous have the building on the front. It is something that visually you immediately get this idea of it's a towering, imposing figure, and the idea that you can have this action fight take place on any of the floors, whether it's, they break in through the entrance, there's a sub garage that they deal with. There's obviously the top floor stuff as you get to closer to the end of the movie. It does a great job of that. And what you were saying earlier about the being able to shoot in a forest and keep it interesting, I think this kind of follows by that same logic of, if you think about an office building, every floor is going to look nearly identical. Every floor is going to have basically the same stuff. So being able to come in and provide those little tiny unique flourishes, not just to the floors themselves that everybody would have access to, but the back rooms as well, the electrical cables and the vents, and you always get an idea of, okay, he's at this point, he's up on this floor, he's down on that floor now. You have a real sense of language just being told with the set dressing even.
Yeah, for sure. There's a random naked lady in one of the sort of maintenance tunnels or whatever it is, and
And they just pan right by it the first time, but they make sure to pause long enough to let you know it's there, and then when they bring it back again, you know exactly where you are.
yeah. It's a signpost, you know. you know where you are in the building because of the boobs.
Yep.
So yeah, just really smart stuff like that. Really good handle on characters, and so much of this movie is about how frustrated McClane makes the bad guys, and how McClane keeps trying to sort of stay ahead of them, try and figure things out, and then of course the fact that all the other supposed good guys end up just playing into exactly what the bad guys want.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's what I was saying earlier about the idea of it being a critique on the like action hero where there's, they're bulletproof and they could just run and all that. That's kind of what I got the vibe of all of those other good guys were supposed to represent. They're the idea of, yeah, we're just going to bust in, kick ass, take names, don't got to worry about anything. And then they get their heads rocked. Then they absolutely do not know what they're dealing with, because this isn't just your stereotypical bad guy, evil army of terrorists thing. This is a higher class of criminal.
yeah, Agent Johnson and Special Agent Johnson were no match
relation.
for Hans Gruber. So yeah, I mean, obviously the movie is from a different time. I mean, I'm not convinced that even a cop could just walk onto a plane with a gun, even in 1988, but I mean, the movie tells me he can, so I'll just roll with it.
Yeah, there's a few things in this movie that are technically, like, if you think about them, not possible. Primarily, the biggest one is the way they treat two-way radios. Like, that shouldn't be technologically possible at all, but it's necessary for the plot, so I just kind of forgive it.
Whatever. Just roll with it and enjoy your time with it.
I will say I do like the intro scene being him flying into LA, because it gives you a little bit of exposition of him not liking flying, and he's already stressed out and all that. But I will say, based off of the intro to this movie, which is just him getting up off the plane, he's got a giant teddy bear he checked into the overhead luggage, and he's walking off the plane with that. And then it cuts to the title text of Die Hard. I'm like, nothing in this movie has earned the title Die Hard yet, but I know we'll get there.
Yeah, well, I mean, even just the fact that he's arriving, and like everything when he walks into the airport is him being uncomfortable with just California, right? He's not used to California. He's from New York. This is a tough time for him. And this was also kind of a trope, even like very different movies, but Beverly Hills Cop also had this. He was the Detroit cop who had to go to Beverly Hills for a case, and he was kind of like a fish out of water there. Like, this was kind of a one of those tropes that action movies we just had for a while. And that was first. I mean, admittedly, I don't know if it was before the book Die Hard's based on, but I mean,
Right.
But regardless, it's just something that is there, and the movie's kind of shouting at you like immediately, is him watching people. And there's a moment where like a flight attendant kind of like gives him a glance as he's walking off the plane with this teddy bear, and he's kind of like uncomfortable by it, and even that's kind of like a little hint that, oh no, he's married, he's like, and not only that is he married, but things aren't great, and he's brought a big teddy bear, probably not for the wife, admittedly. I'm assuming this is for his daughters, but but he's coming in with the big swings to try and make it work. And I think one of the things that I really like about the early part of this movie, I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but when he finally meets Holly and they're on their own, and there's a great little scene, and it's just two actors acting really well, right? Both Willis and Bedelia do a good job here, where they're being kind of awkward, and there's this questions come up of like, oh, where are you going to stay, right, while you're here? I never get a chance to ask you because everything was so rushed in the last minute, which feels believable given the way McClane's talked about his career as a New York cop. He's like, oh, I've got bad guys I need to put away. I'm always doing stuff, blah, blah, blah.
They made it clear that like they weren't sure he was going to come out for Christmas. Not even he was sure it was going to work out. Yeah.
But the fact that he's arrived on like, middle of the day and Christmas Eve says it was very last minute, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
So they're being kind of awkward, and he's like, oh yeah, some old captain retired out here. I'll go and stay with him. And she's like, oh, where does he stay? And he says, was it Pomona?
He says Ramona. She corrects it to Pomona.
Oh, okay. That's probably why I've never understood what they're saying here, because they both say it different ways. And she laughs, and like this spoke to me because people who aren't from areas of the US where it's just cities next to cities next to cities don't quite comprehend the distance, even though it seems like they're very close. Like, it's probably a distance as long as the entirety of the UK that she's laughing at here, and that's why it's going to take so long for him to drive out to this guy's house.
It is 2 hours and 17 minutes, aka 45 miles away.
Okay, it's not the whole of the UK, but it's that's a long way to drive when it's already nighttime and you need to get somewhere. So she's like, okay, I'll make it easy. Come stay at the house, right? Kids would love to have you there. And he kind of looks at her, glances with a smile. And of course, Bruce Willis's charm and charisma is a big part of why he works in this role.
He comes out of he's wearing his tank top already. He comes out of the bathroom. He's like, well, why don't you have my name anymore? And then immediately they just start fighting.
Yeah, I wasn't even at that bit yet, because he says, oh, really? And then she says, I would like to have you there. And then they're interrupted by a couple who are clearly looking for an office to have sex in.
Does that come first? Yeah.
Right. They burst out of the room, and they kind of awkwardly go back out, and Holly sort of like smiles at what they've just seen, because it's kind of adorable. And she looks over at John and says, I've missed you. And it's this moment of like genuine, like, everything up until this moment, every single time his name has come up, or she's been on the phone to her nanny that she was talking to, or she's been talking to her boss or whatever, every single time his name's come up, or when they first met in front of other people, it's awkward, it's kind of weird, they don't know how to react to each other, because clearly things are in a rough place, they've not seen each other in 6 months, blah, blah, blah. And she's made this genuine thing to say, I've missed you. And it seems like he was edging her on to a nice conversation by saying, oh, the kids would want me at the house. And then she has to admit, no, I would too. But as soon as she says that, he F's it up by saying, but you didn't miss my name, though. And this, of course, is where it comes up that when he was checking into the building with the screen from the future, the touch screen CRT.
Man, these things will never catch on.
Well, CRT touchscreens didn't really, but I mean, that's a technicality, I suppose. But he has to screw it up. He has to let himself turn into a dickhead and be like, what's this bullshit? Why are you not using my name? It kind of feels like you're tuned out of the marriage, blah, blah, blah. And they have, they start raising their voices, they shout over each other a little bit. And he even acknowledges this when she walks out of the room, because she has to go and like talk to all the other people working there. She's going to make a speech. He hits his head off the wall and says, oh, good job, John, real effing mature. And I really like this scene because it's showing us right at the start that he is not perfect. This is a mistake. He lets his emotions get the better of him. Things were going well. It was there was the rekindling that Argyle and him were hoping for in the limo when they were talking about it. And he screwed it up because he had to get petty and bring up the thing that hurt his feelings when he arrived in the building, right? Seeing the maiden name on the door and the computer screen, it upset him. He had to bring it up. So instead of this being the start of the marriage being mended, right? Instead, it's turned into this fight, and he's worried, oh, have I just screwed this up? Am I now traveling 2.5 hours to my old captain's house?
Yeah. I also like, it's not critical to the scene. I think that scene is standalone on its own, but I like how it also plays off the frustrations he was getting from the earlier sequence of Ellis talking to him and Mr. Takagi talking to him, and they basically keep on saying like, oh yeah, your wife's doing great. Your wife's like, she's critical here. She's amazing. She's great. And Ellis is like, I want to hit that. She's amazing. But like, the conversation with Argyle in the car is Argyle basically calls him out for saying like, you let her go on her own, hoping she'd fail and then have to come back to New York. And to hear that she's doing well and all that, it kind of just makes him even more frustrated with the whole situation. Yeah,
she's excelling in this role and is like the second in command or whatever it is in the building. So yeah, it sets up the characters well enough, and I think it's also a smart thing for the main character in your action movie, who is going to be something of a badass, right? Even though we keep complimenting and saying, oh, he's not a typical badass who's bulletproof or whatever, but he effectively, by fighting through it and saving the day anyway, is a badass. And it is interesting to start this whole movie off by sort of basically having him feel a little bit emasculated. Right? And that's not to say that like his motivation to survive is to prove how masculine he is. Far from it, right?
He's not yelling out the window, "Hey, are you watching me, honey? You seeing what I'm doing?"
Yeah. I mean, that's not obviously what it's about, but I do think it's kind of interesting. The stuff that he messes up at, the stuff that he's worried about, is the stuff that we all mess up at. It's just like, obviously we all assume we would do terrible in a terrorist situation, but it's the normal everyday stuff of getting into fights, of having like awkward confrontations, and like letting your demons get the better of you and whatever. Like those are the things that we all kind of suffer from a little bit, and that's what makes him relatable. Because he never goes full evil or anything like that. He's just it's a blip. It's like an understandable.
It's
you let
a
it get
character
to
flaw.
him. Yeah.
Like
so,
every good character has a solid character flaw that is something that they need to not even overcome, just something they need to deal with along the way.
Yeah, and I think that's actually the thing that we kind of learned throughout the movie is that he's also very good at his job. Holly's good at her job, but he's also very good at being what he is, and that's something that I think I specifically like about her moments throughout the movie. Whenever we cut back to her and her reactions to what's going on, because obviously when the terrorists first show up and he scatters and he's not in the room with everyone else, she maybe fears the worst. And then, of course, we get the elevator with the dead body in it. And she's like, oh, shit, it's John. But the best one, and I think most people probably like this one the most, actually, is much, much later in the movie when the bad guys have been hunting him for ages at this point, and they've almost got him, but he's slipped away again. And the main long-haired guy, Carl, like, comes out the elevator, and he looks really mad, and then he starts, like, smashing, like, the ice tray or whatever.
Yeah.
And Holly just slowly smiles and goes, he's still alive.
And I love that I think it's the pregnant secretary who's like, how do you know? And she's like, there's only one man who can piss off somebody that much.
There's only one man who can help me now.
Yeah.
That was a Back to the Future reference for everyone.
I am aware, yes.
So, no, I like how that stuff is handled. It's like, okay, yes, he's stubborn, but his stubbornness is also why he's like surviving tonight.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's all good stuff. Yeah, and not to gloss over, by the way, that before he sees her, he meets Mr. Takagi, and he meets Ellis, who was snorting cocaine in her office, and
on her desk.
Yeah, and he makes some excuse about making a phone call, and then John just goes, "You missed some," as he walks past him, and he's like wiping his nose.
I mean, to be fair, he doesn't have jurisdiction here. He's just a dude on the street in LA.
I don't know. They never actually say what type of, like, because he may not be narcotics. He might be homicide. He might be.
Yeah, that's fair. I think they say that he's got like a bunch of scumbags that he's looking to put away. So clearly, I don't think he's a beat cop. I think he's a little bit higher than that.
I would assume so.
Yeah. So also one thing in this movie that I found really interesting, and it just kind of goes back to that idea of pacing and being able to keep you glued to your seat the whole time, is, okay, we have done the bare minimum of exposition here. We have gotten John into the party, his wife, we know the situation between them now, and less than 15 minutes into this movie, boom, here come the terrorists. They have already begun their plan. Like, we don't waste any time getting into the heart of what's going on in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the most exposition you get, and, you know, this is intentional, this is designed this way, is Argyle. Is Argyle prying and asking all the questions that he does. In fact, actually, on that, like, even just that, I mean, it's not even subtle. I was going to call it subtle. It's not subtle at all. But John McClane, like, sitting up front in the limo just to say, no, he's an everyman. He's not some big shot yuppie who, he's not comfortable riding in the back of the limo. He's going to sit up front with Argyle. Yeah.
I even especially liked how, because I was questioning, like, why does he have a limo? And then they take the time, just 2 lines, not even anything, of Mr. Takagi saying, like, yes, we were the ones who sent the limo because we're so grateful for your wife. So not only does it explain why the limo was there to begin with for an everyman, but also doubles up to say, and your wife's incredible at the same time.
Yes. It's almost like, I suppose in a weird way, most couples never get to see each other like at work, right? They never get to see each other doing what they do, especially if they do it well at a high level. And it's almost like the first chunk of this movie is John McClane saying, well, maybe not seeing the work itself, but it's just seeing how appreciated she is and how everyone like thinks she's essential to this operation and she's doing great things. And then the rest of the movie is like Holly seeing just how good he is at what he does. Although, that said though, I'm sure the Nakatomi Plaza incident is probably a little bit different from his day-to-day as a New York cop.
Nah, man, that's what makes New York so rough. He's just going around knocking down buildings all day.
So the first like 15-20 minutes, like you say, is just it's masterclass in terms of just introducing things. By the time Holly and John meet, it feels like we've been building to it forever in a good way. But it's only 12 minutes in or something like that. But because it's John landing at the airport, cuts to Holly making the call to the nanny saying, hey, make up an extra bed just in case.
Yeah, it also like really works. You're saying that it's building to it forever. It's because John keeps on finding other people first. Like he goes to the airport, he finds Argyle. He gets into the party, he finds Mr. Takagi. Then they find Ellis. We find all of these other people in her life until we finally get to her.
That's right, yeah. So even in that short span of time, it feels like it's been quite a journey to get to her. And it has literally been a journey for him because he had to fly coast to coast to come see her. So it almost emphasizes that distance in a weird way.
I'm going to give John full credit here. He must work the night shift or something, because be able to pull all this off, 4 hours jet lagged from New York to LA. Good Lord, this man is a superhuman.
I mean, I don't know. I flew for like 12 hours when I flew, so I mean 4 hours sounds like nothing.
I mean, that's fair, but at that point your internal clock just gives up.
Yes,
4 hours, it still tries to catch up on sleep somehow.
Yeah, you're just breaking down at that point. So I love how we just spent like 20 minutes talking about the first 15 minutes.
All right, place your bets. Are we going past 3 hours?
Oh, we're not going to go past the... No, that's not happening. We're not doing that.
All right. Fair enough.
That. So... One of the little things to do when the terrorists arrive, so they do the whole thing, obviously, where like a couple of them come in the front. It's like what's his name? Theo, the
Theo,
hacker.
And I think Carl might not be Carl. No, it's the guy who ends up being the stand-in.
Yeah, the desk man.
Yeah.
They come in sort of pretending to talk about something just so they can kind of run up and kill the guy at the front, but. What I really like is they give Hans Gruber, and actually, I need to compliment Holly's entrance as well in this movie. They give both of those prominent characters really good entrances. With Holly, they do it by, because the shot for Holly, because the credits are still playing over the footage, it starts off with Mr. Takagi, and he's sort of, he's shaking hands or whatever, and he goes over to a ledge, and he sort of, starts, just giving a speech down to all the employees up in this, because this is the 33rd floor, so we're quite near the roof in this floor where they're all having this party. Right. And he's like, oh, thank you, and the Nakatomi Corporation is having a great year, and you're all to thank for it, blah blah blah. And as he's saying this, Holly either gets out the elevator or walks in off camera from the side, and you don't see her face, you just see her from behind, and the camera then cuts to like a shot from behind her and follows her as she's going down the hall, and Ellis comes up to talk to her. But we don't see her face yet. It's all just him trying to talk to her and say, hey, let's have dinner tonight. Maybe a bottle of wine. And she's like, it's Christmas Eve, Ellis. I've got kids. I'm married as well. But even before we get to that, it's Christmas Eve. It's a weird night to be asking for a random date.
I mean, to be fair, if you're single, you're going to take your swings with other single people. You're going to try to make that work.
Well, she's not single as well.
Well, I mean... Technically, yes, but I'm sure that he doesn't care about the fact that they're separated or whatever.
But it takes a little while before the camera or she turns round and it finally gives you like a face reveal. It builds up to her face. It takes some time and reveals it. Quicker with Hans, but still very effective. Is when they're all getting off the truck. They're in like a sort of a cargo truck and coming out the back of it. And basically we get this thing where a lot of the other terrorists are in front of him and they sort of walk out, and then eventually he's kind of revealed through them. Just simple little visual tricks to make it feel like, oh, he's a big deal. He's the leader. He's the leader. Not just because you recognize Alan Rickman if you know who that is. You know he's
Yeah.
the leader the way that he's presented to you visually.
Yeah, everyone else is wearing like working class clothes. Meanwhile, he's got this very like trim and proper overcoat, and he's walking dead center, whereas everyone else is scattering off to the sides. It's good visual language.
I wish I could remember the tailor that he references when he's talking to Takagi, because I'd say he's probably one of those that he's wearing, but I can't remember that name.
Yeah.
So I'll have to just move on, sadly.
Losing a bit of nerd credit, it's okay.
I think I'm just... I'm not even losing it. I'm just kind of reaffirming my lack of knowledge of upper class tailing.
It says John Phillips, London.
There you go.
It's not the suit he's wearing though, so.
Well, he says I have two myself, but
Yes.
I mean, admittedly, yes, he probably would have said I'm also wearing one of those if he was, but
Look at us, 2 peas in a pod. John Phillips.
so yeah, introductions are pretty much flawless. A little detail that I really like before things kick off is there's one little scene that doesn't actually tell us they're brothers, but you see a little scene with Carl and his brother, who, I can't remember what their name was.
Carlito. I don't know.
I don't know. But the younger brother is like doing some wiring stuff, right, underneath where all the phone lines are. And it's something that he has to finish before all the phone lines are cut. And his big brother comes in with a chainsaw and starts just cutting through these like 7 pipes that have got all the cables in them. And he starts panicking and starts doing his little like bit of like tinkering and electrician shit. And he leaves out this sigh of relief at the end. And I was actually watching it this time thinking to myself, like, why, like, what, like, it's a fun little bit, but why this extra like weird little scene for tension here? Is like we don't even really know the context of what they're doing all that much. I mean, I obviously I get that they're cutting the phone lines, but like I don't really know what the other guy's doing. Why he has to finish this wiring first? But at the end of the scene though, when Carl like takes off his like goggles or whatever and like walks away, you can just see the smirk in his face. Like he knows what he like. He was doing it intentionally to mess with his brother. It wasn't because of any other reason. He was doing it intentionally to mess with him. It's like a little moment to show there's like a bond there.
Not only there's a bond, but also that Carl is absolutely the one that's off the wall.
Oh, he's
like,
he's a psycho.
The unpredictable one.
Yes, he's the angry one, which is why it's perfect that he's the one that's still alive to be angry at John later.
Right. Absolutely.
So
that's the other thing I know about the Die Hard franchise is you never let one of the brothers live and kill the other one.
Yeah, so yes, the terrorists obviously finally come to the party. Everyone freaks out and the screams and whatnot. And
I love Gruber, you know, everyone gets corralled into the main room, and then Gruber, he reads the manifesto as if he's like introducing people at an Olive Garden. He's like, all of you have lived for so big and the capitalists reach and blah, blah, blah. Okay, whatever. Hey, I need to talk to Mr. Takagi now. And obviously, in the scope of the plan, like what it ends up being, it makes sense that this part is absolutely just a formality for him to set up a certain appearance of terrorism. But
yeah,
it's so crazy how like he doesn't put in any sort of effort to be like impassioned about it. He's like, yeah, this is just a formality.
Yeah, well, it doesn't really matter if any of them believe him really anyway, because as far as he's concerned, they're all going to die. My favorite bit of him, like this charade of like we're terrorists with this agenda, is later on when he's like making demands to the lieutenant over the radio, and he's like, I want the release of this group in Quebec and this group in Rikers, and then the Asian Dawn, and it cuts to Carl just being like, Asian Dawn? What? And he's like, I saw them on TV. And just kind of like, he's like,
well, he specifically says, I think it's, I read it in Times.
Yes, that's what it was.
Or Time or something like that. But I love that because it keeps coming back. Like he, at one point says to Takagi, he's like, yes, I read your article in Forbes. Like this is a characterization trait of showing he is intelligent. He is keeping up to date with things. He is going, like he's doing the research all the time on stuff like this.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So just all these little bits were great, and there's even like a little payoff to it later where you see like the lieutenant on the phone going, yes, Dawn, DAWN, that's who we're trying to release from prison.
God, I would love to be on the other side of that phone call of some random ass deputy lieutenant or whatever trying to get like some terrorists released from a prison across the country.
I don't even think they were in America though. This is like an international negotiation.
That's true.
I can just imagine the other country being like, no, F off. No, we're not releasing these terrorists.
Do you understand what time we're already on Christmas Day here? Get out of here.
Oh dear. So I obviously a big part of this movie that wouldn't work if it was made now or set now more precisely is just so much of it is for the first act. Well, maybe the second act technically, but John like trying to communicate with the outside world that there is something going on. That is like a big portion of this movie. Once everything starts, the terrorists are in play. Obviously, it starts off with the Takagi one-on-one that ends with his death, and John witnesses that. But from that point on, it's about, okay, how do we get to like the outside world? How do I tell someone? The phone lines are all cut. He knows they're cut as well because he was talking to Argyle when they were cut, and he didn't know why at the time. But obviously, I think he's probably put two and two together.
When he scrambles to escape later on, he goes into the construction floor and he tries a phone again, but there's no dial tone.
That's right.
So that's when he puts it all together.
So it's like, how do we do this? And it ends up, he uses a radio eventually, but the first thing he tries is the fire alarm. He tries to just like alert the authorities that way. But obviously the terrorists catch it, they call it off, and they're like, hey, what floor was that fire alarm going off on? So that's when Carl's younger brother goes up, and he's all like, don't worry, I won't hurt you. Gun clicks. That's my favorite part of this. I promise I won't hurt you, my friend. Click. Like, I don't know if I trust you, Mr. German. I don't know.
He seems like a very trustworthy man. I would trust that haircut and giant 70s glasses anywhere.
So yeah, this is again, very rough fight where John just sort of has him by the neck and they go down the stairs, and ultimately the German's neck snaps. But little bits here where he looks through his stuff, his belongings. He doesn't say it out loud in this scene, but obviously he sees the fake ID, which he kind of confirms later on and whatnot.
It's again, he just rummages through the guy's bag, and there's no attention drawn to it, but he pulls out a lighter, he flips it on so the audience knows it's a lighter, and then he puts it in his pocket. And you think, okay, he has a lighter. You mentally store that. Fast forward in the movie, it comes back again, and it informs like why another plot point happens. And all of these things are so well broadcast. I promise I won't bring it up every time, but like that one really got me because as he was going through the bag, I mentally took a note of the lighter without even realizing I did. Like the movie just implanted that in my mind so that when he pulls it out later, I don't have to think, oh, was he a smoker? Did we establish that? Like, no, we saw him pick it up.
Yeah. Plus, just there's a lot of things that are kind of like, just to go back to the Hans Gruber Takagi scene, like obviously there's some great lines like, oh, it's a great suit, it'd be a shame to ruin it, so on and so on. But him
what kind of terrorists are you?
Yeah, him talking about the model of there's a big model of a bridge, and it's like clearly the Nakatomi company, whatever it is, is doing this bridge, and I think he said Indonesia, I want to say.
Yes.
But regardless, he in Hans Gruber's waxing lyrics, but I used to love making models as a boy. The attention to every single detail, and that's perfect because while you have no reason to suspect that anything he's saying right now is remotely true, I suspect that it is just because it kind of fits like the way he's meticulously laid out this plan and like all the facets that are in play. But also, detail that I love is that he specifically goes out of his way to take the silencer off his gun that he's going to use to kill Takagi, so it can be heard as far as possible. It's just a nice little touch that just makes it feel more menacing somehow.
I mean, they only pulled him off into the next room over, but this is absolutely a fear tactic to get everyone else in the rest of the company in line to the rest of the demands that they're going to make.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's good stuff. So obviously one of the most famous scenes in the movie is the I've got a machine gun, ho ho ho. And I think people remember this and they think, oh, John McClane's funny, he cracks jokes, and I'm like, yeah, but he does this specifically strategically. He does this so that they'll stand around him and they'll talk, and he's able to like sort of count up like how many terrorists there might be based on who's there, who they talk about, discuss maybe some of their plans, like because he's hiding above the elevator and like listening to
it's a
all
recon
of it.
mission.
Yeah, it's actually very like strategic, and I think that stuff is really good, really fun.
I especially like they show the part where he loads the guy into the elevator and then takes the time to stop the elevator, open the doors, climb out. Like, you don't know what he's doing in the moment, but once we see the result of it, you absolutely understand all of the previous setup of, oh, okay, and now he's on top of the elevator listening in to the conversation underneath.
Yeah, and then after that, he goes up to the roof with the walkie-talkie or the radio that he got from the guy that he's killed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And starts just broadcasting on whatever frequency, maybe one that he even knows because it's like something specifically for...
Yeah, police or something.
Yeah. And they're like, hey, this is an emergency frequency. If you've got an emergency, call 911. And he's like, shit, ladies, it's not like I'm ordering a pizza. And obviously, they're not really listening to him, but then they hear the gunfire because Hans Gruber, again, is smart enough to realize where would he go to broadcast that wide? The roof. Like, go to the roof now.
Now, that's the other thing about this. Like, again, the technology, it has to be walkie-talkies in order to justify, A, why there's no communication with the outside, B, why all this other stuff, but it's also a radio transmitter in a more general sense. It seems like it's able to reach as far as it needs to reach. The only thing technologically that is a bit weird about it is that they also seem to be treating it as if it's a, press the button to talk sort of thing. But then you shouldn't be able to interrupt other people. Like, there are plenty of times where people are talking over each other, people are jumping into the conversation, jumping out. And that's the only thing that, like, technologically is not feasible here, but it is such a minor point for such a important part of the plot that I'm willing to accept it.
I mean, it's for the flow of scenes. It's just something as simple as that. I think you just let it slip for that. So we get a scene where they sort of chase him around the roof a little bit, and I like this for a couple of reasons, right? I mean, one, it's a long string of scenes because it leads to him in the air duct and all that stuff, and like Carl trying to get to him. But Carl, of course, is pissed because McClane killed his brother. So there's a great bit during this whole thing where McClane's running around the roof from the gunfire and he's trying to shoot back and whatnot, where Carl is just stalking over the helipad, just holding his machine gun up, just slyly getting to the other side. And it's almost Terminator-esque, the way he's just sort of walking slowly as all this other fighting's going on. It's good. Again, it's that visual language, much like with the way they introduced Hans Gruber. The visual language tells you he's the one that McClane should be the most scared of in this scene. He's the one that should be taking him seriously. And I think to the point that, we've been getting to throughout the movies, that he doesn't think he's a badass just because he's got a gun. Even though he did just pull that joke off where he had the ho, 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 I've got a machine gun. In this moment, he's got one clip. He changes the clip, so he's got one clip left of the machine gun. At this point, Carl started shooting at him from the upper level, and he's ducking behind this little metal bit. And he's like thinking about returning fire, and then he realizes, no, the smartest thing to do with this machine gun clip is to shoot that door that I can see to create an exit. Like, the strategic thing here is to create the exit and get out of Dodge. It's not to act like a hero and try and fight the bad guy.
Yeah, I don't know how many guys are up here. I don't know how many more are going to be coming. I need to make an exit now. Yeah.
So that leads to whatever. Another detail here that I really like, actually, is obviously during this, Al gets the call, right? Oh, you're the nearest car. I know you're on your way home. Just put down the Twinkies. He's buying a lot of Twinkies. Go and check out this thing at Nakatomi Plaza. And I love that when he gets out and he looks up at the building before he gets in the car, you can actually see flashes of gunfire on the roof. Now, I buy that he wouldn't recognize that as gunfire from that distance, but because we know that's what's happening, because it's intercutting, you can actually see little flashes at the top of the building.
Yeah, it looks like it's like, they've also got lights on there for like helicopters and airplanes.
The safety lights.
It looks like it's just those flashing, but then it immediately does the hard cut to more gunfire being returned. So
yeah, it really sticks out as just a nice little visual. Like, they could have gotten away with just not putting that in, but the fact that they did it is really nice. Like, it looks good.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want a stupid little joke here. Do you think there's a sponsorship deal at any point in history between William Atherton and Twinkies? Because this is now 2 movies that he starred in the 80s that have very prominent Twinkie placement.
I don't know. I mean, the Crunch, Nestle definitely have a sponsorship thing going on with this movie.
That's true. Didn't they? Crunch was also in Ghostbusters as well, wasn't it? That was Egon's bar.
Hey, Does Nestle also? No, because Hostess does Twinkies. It's a different company.
Yeah, I think so.
Unless it's one of those things where Hostess is owned by Nestle.
No, I don't think so.
You know in that way,
Hostess.
Like Pepsi also on like
Yeah,
various brands and stuff.
Yeah, Hostess is its own thing. I don't know. That's weird.
All right. I guess they were just two popular items in the 80s.
Yeah. Neither of which has really stuck around, but whatever.
Yeah, Crunch seems old-fashioned. I mean, I do like a Twinkie, but it's...
I feel like I see Twinkies around, but it is nowhere near the heyday of Twinkies anymore.
Sure.
That was absolutely in this 90s period.
I mean, they've never really been a thing in the UK, but you can get them at import stores, and I think because of something like Die Hard, I wanted to try a Twinkie, and they're pretty good.
It's true.
So, we get the whole TV dinner bit where he's in the vent and whatnot, and again, the villain. So this is the thing. As soon as they say he's in the elevator shaft, immediately Hans is like, "All right, stop chasing him. He's boxed in. He can't get out. The elevators aren't working. He's not a threat right now. We have to deal with the fact that the police are probably on their way," which is the next main set piece of the movie. That's what sort of distracts them, because sure enough, Al, rides up in the car and, who's driving this car? Stevie Wonder, right? You get that line.
They specifically point out, though, Hans is like, look, the police being on their way is fine. It's a normal thing, and we can deal with that, no problem. But not if there's an active gunfight going on. So cool your jets, man.
Yeah. Well, that becomes a big part of it, though, is that McClane, realizing that they're doing a good job of hiding that anything's going on, starts trying to break the window and whatever floor he's on to alert Al that something's happening. And of course, like, they see this, like the bad guys see this, so like two of the bad guys rush to that floor, and he gets a bit of a gunfight. And we get the shoot through the table death is the memorable part here, I would say, where he kind of shoots up through the table and says, "Thanks for the advice."
Oh, is that the guy that you were talking about?
Yeah, that's the guy that looks kind of...
All right, yeah, I'll give you that one.
Yeah, he's got more of a, like I say, a Tony Montana kind of vibe to him. But I cannot tell you how funny I find, like, not so much the line, "Welcome to the party, pal," but just the entire, like, incident that is happening.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The idea that Al has chosen to not search the building. He says, "This is stupid. I'm just going to leave." He walks out, goes back to his car, and then what has McClane done to get his attention? He's thrown the dead body of the terrorist onto the car.
Yeah. I'll admit, I completely forgot about what caused him to come back, like what to realize that something was going on. My initial thought was, oh, he could just, like, when Bill Johnson's walking back out to the car, just fire a few shots out the window. Like, that would be enough. It would totally get his attention. But John McClane does not half-ass anything.
No.
John McClane full-asses everything.
No, and I think it does take some shots to the car, although the villains are also shooting at the car at a certain point, because once McClane says, "Welcome to the party," you can actually see some more muzzle flashes happening.
Oh, yeah, I think it's all villains. I don't think McClane's shooting at him at all. I think it's 100% the villains who were just trying to light him up, because obviously at that point, they were not supposed to have him see a dead body just land on the roof.
That's going to cause some questions. But the whole thing is just hilarious to me, because it's like, McClane's having the worst night of his life. He's struggling to survive. He's already been shot at so many times. He's bare feet, which we're not even mentioned yet, but that's a plot point for later. And it's just like, yeah, here you go. This is the sort of shit I've been putting up with. Here's a dead body. Now get the cavalry in here right now.
It just goes back to that idea before with, like, what we had with his wife, of that frustration that was just building up more and more, of seeing people saying how successful his wife is and how she totally is making it here despite the fact he wanted her to kind of fail a little bit. It's that same thing here of, we've seen the emergency vehicles coming for the fire alarm and then turning around. We see I'm blanking on his name because I just want to say Carl from Family Matters.
Al,
that's right. We see Al entering the building and then leaving again. And you can just feel his frustration of, like, all right, guess I got to do this my way.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, it's that build-up effect again. Yeah, you're right. Just in the same way we kept meeting other characters before we finally got to Holly, we kept being cock-teased with, like, authorities coming and finding out something's going on and then turning away. And then, this is how it finally happens. Like, okay, finally, the cup runneth over, right? It's finally spilled. Here we are. Like, everyone's in the know. So we get the lieutenant and all that showing up, and
Yep.
50 cop
We also
cars.
get the cut to the news station where Dickless is listening to the police
Yes.
scanner, and he hears cop car being lit up, and so he begs for a news van in order to get over there ASAP.
Yeah, there's a whole like comedy bit with like the news anchor who's a dick and isn't ready when they go live on the air. The female anchor on the show is an actress who was in the Lethal Weapon movies.
Oh, okay.
And a very small role in that as well. It's not like none of her roles are particularly big in either movie, but they just an interesting little link between them.
Yeah.
So yeah, from here, I mean, I think it's around here where like Holly kind of becomes like the leader of the hostages and kind of comes and makes some requests to Hans. I think that's around this.
Yeah,
part of the movie.
roundabout. All the detectives show up. We see the news bit. What's his name? John gets the C4 from the bag of the detonations guy.
Yes.
So he now has explosive capabilities. But then, yeah, that's where Holly comes in and says, yeah, I've got a pregnant woman. Can you let us put her on a sofa? And honestly, Hans is like, yeah, sure. Like, he's playing ball. He's not like, no, go sit down. We don't care about any of you. Like, he's willing to be civilized about this whole thing at the very least.
Yeah, and he kind of like recognizes that she's being very straight about everything, and like it's on its own, it's fine. But I think the big thing with this scene with Holly is the contrast that it has with the scene with Ellis a little bit later when Ellis goes to speak to him, and
Yes.
just how much Ellis is just bullshitting his way through the whole conversation, and he's like, "Hey Hans, booby, you know things. You're hip. You're happening, and I can get you what you want."
I love that scene just for the way Hans plays off of him, where he's just like, you seem like the kind of guy who knows how to negotiate. And Hans is like, my God, you figured it all out.
He is so sarcastic in that scene. And Ellis, like, how does he not see that he's being mocked the entire time?
I'm going to guess it's about 75% stupidity, 25% cocaine.
Also, someone pointed this out to me years ago, but it's kind of a joke that they bring him a can of Coke when he's on the radio. It's almost like he's got a Coke problem. So they've said, "What do you want?" "Oh, I want some Coke," and they bring him a can of Coke.
Yeah, I never even thought about it, but yeah, you're right. Just with the Holly scene though, before we dip away from that, is the scene ends with him. Gruber's basically like, "Yeah, okay, you've presented your facts here. You didn't ask for anything else. You didn't try to be a hero. Real respect's real." And he asks what her name is, and she says Gennaro.
Yes.
Obviously knowing, like, don't give your real name here. And also, she's standing right next to her own door. So, like, that's immediately verifiable information. So, very smart on Holly's part.
Which we should probably mention at this point, earlier on, before John arrived, she put down a photograph that she had of the whole family with John in it. And she put it face down, and it was kind of like, a little moment of like, I almost read that scene as like her not wanting to let John know that she still, like, she wants to sort of not let him know too many of her cards, that she's still got a photo of him on her desk. Like, so no, I'm going to hide that. It's kind of how I read that at the start of the movie.
She flipped it down when she was talking to the nanny, and the conversation was basically like, make up a room for him if he shows up. So she didn't want to admit to herself that she was hoping that he was going to show up.
Yeah, it's in prep before he arrives. And then, of course, she glances over at it during this scene, right in this moment where she says, "My name's Gennaro, Miss Gennaro." And it's kind of like you can see the gears turning in her head. You can see that this is the moment she's realizing, oh, I can't let him link me to John. Like, this guy cannot find out, and that photograph needs to stay face down. Yeah. And of course, there's a big moment later where Hans like lifts it up, but I think what I like about that later though, when he does, is that he doesn't just sort of like casually lift it up and like that's the shocking thing. He sees the photograph and it all clicks. He lifts it up as a confirmation because he's already kind of figured it out, and it's like, oh, I think I know what's here. And he looks at it and like it really plays well later on when it all comes together. So no, really good stuff.
So the very next scene is the only thing that it made me think Argyle was going to get back into the plot. So Argyle this entire time has just chilling in the garage, because he told John he'd wait until he got something, like either you get with your girl and then I can give you both a lift home, or you don't get with her and I can get you to a hotel. But this is where he sees on the news, Dickless is saying terrorists at Nakatomi Plaza. And he's like, wait a minute, I'm at Nakatomi Plaza. And so he starts getting invested. And I thought that was going to be like, oh, he's going to call out to the police, or he's going to do anything to get involved with the rest of the plot going on. No, he just stays in the car.
Yeah, I mean, I think at that point, obviously, they obviously already know on the outside that this is all going on, so it's not like it... Because, yeah, on a first viewing, I could see you thinking, oh, he's got a car phone that's separate from the building. Mm-hmm. He could potentially call out for help. Right. If somehow... Because
that was the thing with everything that's being said between John and the police, Gruber and Co. can hear. It's an open line. Yes. They're all using the publicly accessible radio waves. So him having that separate car phone, I thought was absolutely going to be crucial of, we can share private information. We can get something across to the police without anyone else knowing.
No, I mean, that's fair. I don't even really think about it because I'm so used to like what just happens, I guess.
Right,
but,
right.
That said, though, I do love it cutting to him a couple of times for his reactions because he's listening to the radio after that point. And he there's a moment where John says to the lieutenant, "You just got butt effed in national TV," and it cuts to Argyle just laughing his ass off. Yeah. I love Argyle just kind of becomes John's fan at a certain point and is just kind of rooting for him. It's
absolutely
delightful stuff. Which I guess that's kind of the next big section is, sure, you know, the lieutenant has been like, okay, you know what? We're brought in the SWAT team. We're going to do this, right? We're going to send in the men. And Al's like, wait, what? Why? Like they've got 30 hostages in here, and he's like, we don't know jack shit. Like this guy, like, you think he might be a cop because he said some cop sounding things. We don't, because John's using the name Roy at this point because he doesn't want Hans Gruber and bad guys to hear who he really is.
He's already talked to Hans, and Hans called him a cowboy, and he's like, yeah, I was always partial to Roy Rogers, and that's where, of course, we get the yippee-ki-yay line.
The classic yippee-ki-yay line. Mm-hmm. So John sees that this is happening. He starts begging them to not do it. It's a stupid idea. It's not going to work. And of course, Hans and that are ready for it. They've got, guys all lining up with machine guns at the doors to take on the SWAT team.
Yep.
And you've got the lieutenant saying kick ass is the order to go in. And the bad guys just shoot the SWAT team. They all get hurt.
The first thing they do is they start shooting out the lights, to which the lieutenant's like, see, they don't even know where our guys are. And then meanwhile, Al's just like, they're shooting out the lights. And all the lights suddenly get shot out. And then the lieutenant's like, they're shooting out the lights. And then you just see Al just like, oh my God, this guy's my superior.
That's good. It's not as good as later on, though, when the FBI show up and he starts buttoning up his coat and he's like, do you want a breath mint?
Yeah. Al is such a sarcastic guy. He has absolutely no regard for his superiors, and I love it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And this is also the random bit where that one guy decides to get some chocolate bars while he's waiting for the SWAT team to show up.
I don't remember if this is just a rumor or something I actually heard was confirmed, but basically he just did that and they left it in the movie because they're like, okay, yeah, it's a good moment, no big deal. But that immediately, just from an acting standpoint, makes him a character. Up until this point, he was a thug. He was just a random guy with a gun. But the moment he does that, he is now a character that I recognize, and I'm like, that's the chocolate guy. And I'm going to trace him throughout the rest of this movie.
What's so funny about it, though, is that the composer Michael Kamen put in a little sting when he sort of looks around as if oh, no one's watching, I could just take a chocolate bar. You're already a terrorist, no one's going to kill you, stole a chocolate bar. Yeah,
but he's got to look around. There's technically no chocolate on the job.
And of course, when all the SWAT guys get put down, they bring in an RV, right? And my favorite thing about this is that this character I'm about to mention isn't really a character because he's barely. This is almost his only line of dialogue, but it's basically the leader of the SWAT team who's calling the shots for his team next to the lieutenant. And the lieutenant says something, and it goes over. The camera pans over to this leader of the SWAT team, and he's like, "Bring in the car." Bring in the car. And he says it a second time, yeah, we've got a big car. I've got a big dick. You know that? We're going to show him our big dick right now. That's the tone of which he says it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Again, like just going back to that idea of the macho action hero who cannot possibly fail.
Yeah. So unfortunately for them, though, Hans Gruber and co brought some rocket launchers to
Hmm.
to take out such a vehicle.
And this is where it also shows John's side of things because they fire off the first shot. It doesn't entirely destroy the RV. And then Hans calls over the radio saying, hit it again. And John calls back and he's like pleading. He's like, look, you made your point. They know they're outclassed. Let them get away. And Hans just says, no, I'm going to kill them.
Yeah, no, I like that moment because it's interesting hearing John try to interject because as much as we said the bad guys can hear everything John and like the police are saying to each other, like John can also hear everything Hans is saying to the other bad guys as well. Like, it goes both ways. So it is fun hearing him try to like break into that.
Except they do establish that Theo, who at this point is trying to break into the vault, it has like 7 locks, and the last one is this super hard one that requires outside help in order to do. He is on a separate line entirely, and only him and Hans can hear each other.
Yeah. So, yeah, and then John tries to put a stop to this by getting some of that C4 that he grabbed off the detonators guy, and puts a bunch of detonators into it, hooks up to a big computer monitor, and throws it down the elevator shaft, and causes a big boom. Yes, which you know, as John puts it, he feels pretty underappreciated when all the lieutenant can say is that he destroyed a building.
I love that. His lieutenant gets on and he's just like, who are you? We don't need your help here. This is property damage. And he's like, I'm sorry, that's the focus? That's what we want to put the focus on right now is I blew up a building, whereas he just blew up your fancy little car?
We got 100 people down here covered in glass. Glass? Who gives a shit about glass?
I just love he passes it back over to Al, and Al's just like, you doing okay there, buddy? You all right?
And this leads directly to the Ellis stuff, which is Ellis sort of saying, you know what, I'm sick of that dumb husband of yours going to get us killed. He snorts some cocaine, and he's like, hey, Sprechazy negotiations? So I can't remember what the line was. It was Sprechazy something.
Yeah, pretty much that.
It wasn't English, though, because that's what I'd expect to hear. He says, Sprechazy talk, I think is the line.
Yes, Sprechazy talk.
And he goes, he's such a smug prick. Hans is super sarcastic. We kind of already mentioned this. But what this actually leads to is him claiming that he is a friend of John McClane's, and he wants to negotiate this deal to give John over to the bad guys, even though, like, John knows that this will just get both of them killed if it happened to work. So, you know, obviously, I love the moment, though, where Hans calls him over the radio, because John's sharing, like, a little nice moment with Al. They're bonding, and Hans just butts in and says, hey, I'm here with a special friend. And the way John turns around and the camera kind of is close up on him, he's thinking Holly. You know he's thinking, oh shit, he's figured out who my wife is. But then, of course, you hear Ellis's voice, and he's like, Ellis? Is that you, Ellis?
Yeah, well, I love it because John doesn't let on either. He's like, I need to figure out what the situation is first.
Yes.
Like, what did Ellis say here? So as Ellis is like, oh, hey, yeah, John, I look, you're causing problems. We all know this isn't going to end until you stop blowing stuff up. So just come down here. And then John's like, what did you tell them? Like, specifically, what do I do? Because apparently he already shared his name and his occupation as a New York PD officer. So he's like, what exactly did you tell him? And then Ellis is just like, hey, I told him the truth, that you and I are old buddies, and I'm the one who invited you to this party, and everything's chill. And it's like, you see this relief on his face where he's like, Ellis didn't mess it up that badly. Okay.
He's getting himself killed, but at least he's not getting Holly killed, so that's something. Yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff at play in that dynamic. And then, of course, it gets to the point where John's like, hey, don't do this. And he's like, hey, put Hans back in the line. He's like, Hans, this guy doesn't know how bad you are, but I do. He's like, well, good then. You'll know I'll kill him then. So that's you know, turn yourself in.
Meanwhile, Hans pulls out the gun, and Elsa's like, hey, man, look, this is all a show. Like, you don't actually have to pull out the gun.
Like, I mean, credit to the actor here, but, like, the way that every time Ellis says something to John over the radio, and then he'll do, like, a sort of, like look for approval over at Hans, where he'll be like, yeah, do you like that one? Do you like what I just said to him there? Yeah, pretty good, right? Pretty good.
He's literally the worst. But then, yeah, he just cuts to John and you hear the gunshot go off and then a bunch of screaming. And obviously, he shot Ellis.
Yes. Yes. The terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they shot Ellis. That was the line from the song that I was trying to remember earlier.
There you go. Yep.
That was the full thing.
And then it goes back out. And for some reason, the deputy, like, thinks that John just let Ellis die instead of, like, turning himself in. And meanwhile, Al's just like, are you stupid? Like, they were both going to get shot regardless. That was nothing to do with him not being able to stop this by turning himself in.
Yeah, John was basically begging for this not to progress. And then, obviously, Ellis put himself in that situation, and here we are. He is dead. Just to up the stakes once again. And what's so nice about this, though, is this idea of, like, covering the tracks of what the truth is that quite quickly after this, when they're going around and they're looking for the detonators and stuff still, because by this point they're like 5 men down, right? Or 6 men down, right? Because of all the different people that John's killed at this point. So they're a bit short-staffed. So Hans himself goes up to check something near the roof, right? Something, we find out later it's the big bombs that they've set up for the roof. But John finds him. He bumps into him, right? And there's a great reveal where Hans jumps down from where he was looking and he just sees the bare feet, the dirty bare feet of John McClane. And it takes him a second to process, like, oh God, what did I do? And then he tries to do an American accent. And do you know what I loved about this? Is that he would slip his accent, but it would slip into his German accent, which is actually really impressive from an acting perspective. He wasn't slipping into his real English accent. He was intentionally, as an actor, trying to he was faking a German and faking an American accent and not doing it that well.
Not to blatantly steal from Tropic Thunder, but he's the dude playing the dude disguised as another dude.
Yes.
Like, good on him.
Very impressive. But obviously it's revealed that McClane always suspected that this was Hans, or at the very least suspected he was a bad guy. So he gives him a gun that's not loaded and all the rest of it, and that's how it plays out. But the thing I really like is at the start of the conversation when Hans says, "Oh, like, who are you? How did you end up here?" He's like, "Oh, I got sent an invite to the party by mistake." Like, he's covering his tracks and still not revealing any link that he's here with someone, that someone in those hostages is someone that he cares about. He's still covering that.
He's also taking advantage of the fact of what is actual knowledge at this point. Like, everyone in this building theoretically knows that he's from New York. Like, he can't come up with something saying like, "Oh, I'm the doorman" or something like that. He actually has to say something that would fit with the facts that have already been established. Yeah.
So good stuff. Obviously, he did radio down for more bad guys to show up. So the Carl and some of the other guys come out of the elevator. Guns start going off willy-nilly. John gets a couple of them, but he's outnumbered. And this is the scene where Hans says, "Shoot the glass," which is like, he knows he's not got any shoes on. This is going to be bad for him. And it is, it does look really, like, see when John looks over at the exit and he just looks at the floor and it's nothing but shards of glass. And then the camera just looks at his feet. You're like, oh no.
Yep.
Oh no.
And he has to like walk/crawl through all that. And you see the fallout pretty damn bad in the next scene.
Oh yeah. When he's dragging his foot around and there's just smears of blood like going all over, and then he's on the radio to Al for a good bit of time where he's like pulling bits of glass out of his foot.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Al's telling him like, "Hey, we got a pull down here as to whether or not you're going to make it." And despite the fact he is bloodied, torn up, beaten here, he's like, "Yeah, put me down for 20. I think I'm going to make it."
Yeah, and that's the scene where they really bond, because Al like opens up about why he sits behind a desk most of the time now, because he accidentally shot a kid when he was a rookie or whatever, and then John's like, "Hey, I'm starting to feel like I might not make it here. Hey, if my wife gets out of this, like, tell her this, tell her that, tell her I'm sorry."
I like, he specifically says, "Tell my wife this," but like, he says, "Once this is over, you'll know how to find her." Like, he doesn't say she's in the building, but he does say, even if like you don't know anything about me, you're gonna be able to find my wife.
It's very specific worded in case Hans is listening, And there's no indication to us in the scene that he is listening right now, but he might be. So you have to, play it safe.
Yeah, gotta be careful.
One thing I liked as well, actually, in that scene where Hans is faking the American accent, is that so much of that scene is Dutch angles. Like that, the way that scene is shot is so different to every other scene in the movie.
Yeah, because it's both people pretending to be other people. So you've got this idea of like, all right, nothing is as it seems. Let's throw the camera on its side and see what we can do.
Really good stuff. So, yeah, at this point we're getting in. The FBI are showing up around now.
There is one little cutaway that I really appreciated is on the news station. They cut to an interview with apparently someone who wrote a book about like terrorists and hostages and stuff like that.
Yes, Helsinki from Sweden.
The Helsinki syndrome in Sweden or Finland, whichever. But I love the fact that he's coming in here. He's saying like, well, around this time, you're going to have this thing where the hostages and the terrorists are going to like form a bond, and the hostages are going to see their terrorist people as like friends or friendly, and they're going to maintain a bond with that. And then smash cut to them dragging the body of Ellis like through the halls, just like, no, that's not what we're dealing with here. This is a different class of criminal.
Yeah, it's the same thing with the FBI and like them shutting off the power and thinking, oh, they'll be shaking in their boots now, but no, actually, Ode to Joy's playing because it's exactly what they wanted. Like,
yeah,
it's the
they
same...
made it through the 6 locks, but then the last one was a lock that was kept on because of the power and couldn't be turned off internally.
Yeah.
So with them shutting off the grid, that opens the final lock.
So, yeah, it's basically this idea of, I guess, between both, that like the playbook or the theory of how to deal with something isn't necessarily always accurate, and you have to actually pay attention to what's going on.
I mean, it's that, but also it seems like if someone's aware of the playbook, then they're going to be able to play around it at every turn.
For sure. I mean, hell, the whole thing with Hans and the whole movie is that they're pretending they're terrorists when they're actually just a common thief. Oh, apologies. Exceptional thieves.
Yes. Upgrading to kidnapping.
Yeah, that line later on between Holly and him is one of my favorites. It's just such the way he slides into shot and just gets really offended. I am an exceptional thief.
He's still trying to keep up the facade, but just that slide over, you get how manic he is. He's like, I have lost more men than I assumed I was going to be losing, and things might actually fall apart. Yes,
things are getting pretty rough at this point. So yeah, the FBI, this is a good place to talk about them, because
Johnson and
Special Agent Johnson. Agent Johnson and Special Agent Johnson. Is that, so yeah, they're the ultimate, we're badasses, we're going to take care of this, we're going to act cool.
They said the line where it's like the deputy guy comes up and he's like, yes, I'm a deputy, I'm in charge of this situation. And he pulls out a cigarette. Not anymore. And I'm like, of course.
Well, everything with, obviously the power thing, right, is like, oh, cut the grid or you'll lose your job, blah, blah, blah. So they're overconfident, all the rest of it. But then, like, okay, we let them sweat for a few minutes, then we bring in the choppers. And when they bring in the choppers, like, there's literally a line of dialogue where one turns to the other and says, so what do you figure, eh? We take out the terrorists, you lose maybe 20-25% of the hostages tops? Yeah, I can live with that.
I was glancing away from my screen at that point. Like, I had to take care of some other stuff. And I had to rewind for that, because I'm like, who in this movie is okay with losing 25% of the hostages? And then I saw it was the FBI agents. I'm like, all right, that tracks.
Oh, dear. And, obviously, the first thing John does when he's done patching up his feet the best he can, which is not very well, might we add, he goes back to where Hans was to see what he was doing. He's like, okay, what were you up to, Hans? And he just like pokes his head up and sees like the sea of C4. He's like, oh no.
Where one bar was enough to completely blow out a level, this is at least like 24 bars of C4.
Yeah. So he knows this whole helicopter thing is a trap. He runs up, kills the one bad guy, and like, tries to tell everyone like to get down, but also, where's Holly? That's going on.
Well, no, that's at the very, very end. So the stuff that happens in interstitial is the battle with Carl.
Oh, of course, yes, the battle with Carl's before he goes up to the roof, you're right. Because he's on his way up there when Carl kind of makes his presence felt, and they have a one-on-one fight. And Carl doesn't want to just shoot him. He wants to have a fight. Like, he's like, hey, this is personal between us. So we get them slamming each other into barrels, and then ultimately Carl gets hung in a chain and like it's on like a pulley system, so he actually sort of like pulls him across the room at the end of the scene. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it is. Also, throughout this entire thing, once it was announced that John McClane was with the NYPD, Dickless and his news crew started digging into him. One of the people got a home address for Holly's place. So then they go to John's house, or not John's, Holly's house, threaten the nanny with deportation in order to get inside, and then start interviewing his kids on TV, which is just enough because they say the lines of something along the lines of like, "What, your mommy and daddy are stuck in a very special place right now. Like they might be in trouble. What would you like to say to them?" And Hans hears this and is like, "Mommy and daddy?" And that's when he flips up the painting or the portrait and is like, "Oh, damn it. This one should have been figured out earlier."
And notably, this is important, is that while that one photograph was down, there was other photos of just their kids that have been up the whole time. So Hans has been looking at, he's seen photos of the kids. So he recognizes the daughter. He's like, "Mummy and Daddy," picks up the other photo and is like, "Mrs. McLean, what a pleasure to meet your acquaintance."
How different would it be if there was just, by sheer coincidence, a photo of her and Ellis at the same time? Which is like, oh, whoops, my bad. Killed your husband. You acted remarkably normal about it.
Oh, dear. Yeah, I wanted a divorce anyway. He's awful. It's fine.
Yeah, he's the worst.
Yeah.
Coke problem.
Oh, dear. So, yeah, John kills Carl and, like, obviously gets them off the... Well, he has to actually fire the gun into scare them off the roof because no one's listening to him. And immediately the FBI guys in the chopper are like, "Oh, there's a terrorist shooting at hostages." I'm like, are you even looking at where he's aiming? Because he's aiming into the sky.
He's causing terror, Pete. That's what terrorists do.
So the FBI spend their final few minutes on this trying to kill John McClane like a pair of tits. But of course, once all the hostages start running back down and Hans finds out, he's like, "Blow the roof now, blow it."
To be fair, your earlier statement of the FBI agents spend their last minutes on Earth trying to kill John McClane, I think that applies to many people over the course of this franchise.
True, but most of them are bad.
I'm gonna call the FBI agents bad. I'm gonna safe with that one.
Well, bad in a more traditional way.
That's fair. So yeah, John spends the entire time hyping himself up. He's got a fire hose tied around his waist, and he's just like, "Oh God, how did I even get into this whole mess? What's going on?" And he ends up just as the roof blows. He gets the dramatic leap off over to the side of the building.
Yeah, it's this is the scene I referenced heavily back when I reviewed Godzilla versus Kong, because there's a scene in that movie where Kong jumps off a boat as it's exploding, and it's exactly the same shot as John McClane jumping off the roof with the explosion behind them.
It is. I know exactly the shot you're talking about.
Yeah. And then he's dangling, but the fire hose like holder's coming down. He shoots the window to get in, but then of course the fire hose big metal spool starts to drag him down, so he has to try and get that. It's just a fun extended sequence, and just at this point he's so beat up, he's so dirty and sweaty, he's barely surviving.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely at this point when he undoes the hose thing and you see how close he did to falling to his death. His face is just like, "Oh my God. Like, God is trying to kill me today, and I am only alive by sheer dumb luck."
Here's something I like about this part of the movie, though, is that this is where the lieutenant character kind of has a bit of a face turn, where it's almost like he's been humbled by everything that's happened.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's just because there's the presence of the even bigger dicks and the FBI guys, but when the helicopter blows up, he just looks up and very deadpan goes, "I guess we're going to need to get another couple of FBI guys." And it almost felt like, oh, it's that joke in The Office, right? I don't know if you remember this joke in The Office where there's like I think it's like season 4, Michael Scott has to go and like be like a regular employee at another company or another branch for a while, and there's a whole bit where he starts like going, "Oh, all these meetings they have every day are pointless, they never lead to anything," and that's all he's ever done when he was boss. It kind of felt like that to me a little bit, where the lieutenant's like, because like these other assholes have come in and sort of like acted like a even worse version of himself, he's finally he's like, "Oh yeah, these guys were useless. I don't know about that." It was
yeah, no, I get it. It definitely gets the vibe that he didn't like that he was upstage. So once it's done, it's just like, "Oh, geez, can you believe these guys?" And now it's just like, shut up.
Yeah, it was that. It was also when they were cutting the power where he was like, I don't know, guys, it's Christmas Eve. There's like thousands of people on this grid. Maybe we shouldn't be cutting the power. I should probably call the mayor or something. He's a bit of a weasel. Maybe face term was a bit too generous because he's still a bit kind of a prick. But like, you know,
he's kind of a less awful version of Dickless.
Yes, that's fair. I
Yeah.
think that's fair. Yeah. Of course, whenever you mentioned he's the principal in a Breakfast Club, for people who know
Yes.
that.
Mhm.
That's the other thing he's probably known for. So, I mean, at this point, we're kind of, we're ramping up to the finale.
We just get one scene of Theo, who's now trying to escape with a bunch of the Bonds, gets stopped by Argyle, thus wrapping up the Argyle plot, whatever you want to call that.
Argyle gets to punch someone, and to be fair, Theo felt like the one who wasn't like a fighter. He was like kind of the tech guy, so I was like, okay, it's the perfect person for Argyle to take on.
He wasn't going to carry a gun, so it made sense.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously they get into the vault though. We got Ode to Joy and all that playing before all the explosion stuff. John only has 2 bullets left. He's very badly beaten, but it hints at the Christmas tape. He comes in, he makes a big song and dance of it where he's yelling for Holly. And I do love the reaction on Holly here, because when she like gets pulled out and like Hans is using her as a shield and he's got a gun up to her head, like the way, obviously he looks like he's been through hell, and she actually does look at him and is like, oh hell. Oh John, you've been through it.
I recognize it as like 50%, or probably more like 90% of like, oh god, geez, what have you been through? But I like to imagine there's at least 10% there of like, you have never been sexier to me before in my entire life.
Yes. But this is what I was getting at the start, my whole thing here, like 2 hours ago now, is that Hans Gruber only loses here at the very end of this movie is because John's got under his skin and Hans Gruber decides to do something on Hans Gruber, right? Where he laughs at the joke, he says the yippee-ki-yay, mother effer, and it's that moment where John has his opportunity to grab the gun and, yell for Holly. And there's so many little things in the performance as well that make this work. Is like when John does throw down his machine gun, which we know is empty anyway, but the other characters don't know that. Yeah. Holly looks like mortified. Like the moment he drops that gun, she looks like she thinks, "Oh, that's it, it's over. Like he's dead, I'm dead. Like we've just lost because he dropped that gun." Yeah. So it really sells the fear of it.
But then the moment he starts cracking up laughing, like you see her look confused and then kind of come to like a mild realization of like, okay, something in here I'm not getting the full picture, because the guy I know would not start laughing in this situation.
Yeah, he's got something. He's got something up his sleeve, or taped to his back, as the case may be. So our American doorman is like other than Hans Gruber, is the final terrorist to get killed. He gets shot here in the head.
Like straight through the head. He's out.
And of course, just to bring everything back round full circle, Hans Gruber has been shot, but he holds on to Holly as he falls out the window, so there's a whole struggle here to try and get him to let go. But what is he holding on to? What has he got his grip on through all this?
Some sort of anonymous watch brand? It didn't seem like a familiar brand to me. If only someone told me.
It's a Rolex.
Oh, okay.
So John's like trying to get this stupid Rolex off her wrist. And we get the slow motion shot of Alan Rickman's face like switching from like I'm going to kill you to oh shit I'm dying. It's very good.
Again, one of those commonly quoted things. I don't know if it's actually proven, but they apparently told Alan Rickman, hey, we're going to drop you on 3, and then they dropped him on 1, and that's why his face was like, what?
I mean, hey, it worked. Do you know, it goes to a wide shot of like the body falling down, and it looks like a real body, so I'm not sure like what sort of like crazy stunt this was. The only thing you don't see is the impact, because it goes behind something right at the bottom, but it does look very good because it's a big long fall, this body's going down, and it looks real.
I mean, we don't see enough details to say that it is actually like human, like it could just be a dummy or whatever, but it falls very realistically. So however they taped it up or shoved pipes in there to keep it realistic, it worked.
The movement makes me think it's a stunt.
I get that, but like it's also, he's falling fast. There's a lot of wind going on. Yeah. It's possible it might be that. So it might be a stunt as well, in which case at the bottom would just be an air cushion.
Yeah, it'd be a big huge air cushion, yeah. And maybe there's like a cable as well that's kind of like guiding him down that's been, painted out or whatever. I don't know, but it looked really good because I've seen a lot of dummies fall in movies. I know what a dummy looks like. It's usually pretty obvious. So
oh yeah,
I'm very impressed. Also, that's when the lieutenant gets his other funny line in the movie, which is he looks up and goes, "I hope that's not a hostage."
Yeah.
That's a funny line.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we didn't even mention all the other hostages when John told them to get out of here. They just ran out the front door. Like,
oh yeah, they just kept going down. Yeah, they're out of here. So we get our overly saccharine ending where they're coming out in slow motion, and there's the loving stare between John and Al as they see each other for the first time.
I have never seen two men who have never met before be so like, we did it, buddy. We solved this.
Oh dear. And then of course Carl magically survived the hanging and tries to shoot John just so that Al gets to pay off his little story beat that they set up by firing his gun.
He was afraid to shoot anything, but then he saved the day in the end.
Yes, and then he was getting ready to shoot Argyle, and McClane had to play. No. He's not a good guy. He's not a bad guy. Rather, he's fine.
Yeah, that's my limo driver. You don't get to shoot him.
So yeah,
can you imagine if he did get too trigger happy and once again shoots like a kid?
Oh Jesus, that'd be a dark
17.
ending.
Oh god, that'd be the worst.
Oh dear. Nah, paper falls. Let it snow plays.
Dickless gets punched in the face.
Oh yes. Holly, without even saying why she's mad at him, just punches him in the face. Because, of course, like that's the whole thing with that plot with Dickless, is that basically it all boiled down to he is what ruins the charade. That the whole movie, they've kept up this thing. Even wants to know that John McClane is called John McClane. Even wants to know he's a cop from New York. They never know who he's connected to in that building. So Holly's as safe as any of the other hostages.
Yep.
This guy ruins it by putting her kids on the news, which, by the way, typically you need parental consent to put kids on the news, just FYI.
But it doesn't seem like he cared much about that, considering he was also going to deport the nanny just for saying, please don't come into this house on Christmas Eve while neither of the parents are home.
Yeah, very, very reasonable on her part, but yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. So it's pretty obvious here, because of the actions, Ellis is better than Dickless. Dickless is below him on the totem pole of decent actions, because at least Ellis had the decency to not get Holly involved. Whether that's due to his own selfish nature, trying to make himself seem the center of things, who knows? But at least he did that.
I would argue it probably is, but yeah, it's...
Yeah.
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, they're both self-serving for sure. Like, it's because it's not like this guy's clearly just trying to get his career. Like, this will be the story of my year or my career. Yeah. This will be my trip to the big time kind of thing. And Ellis is just trying to save his own ass.
I was gonna say both of them are acting in this thing of like, hey, I could be this hero. I can do whatever. Like, I can do this big moment. But at the very least, Ellis is trying to vouch for the safety of these other people. Whereas Dickless is 100% just like, I don't care if they're safe. I just want to tell the story.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they both fall into just an extension of what we were talking about with the FBI guys and with the lieutenant. They're a slightly different flavor of it, but it's the same thing. It's like, oh, I think I can be the hero and solve this. I think I can be the hero here and get the scoop and get the story. Like, it's all these people that are not treating the situation with the gravitas that it actually should have.
Right.
And ultimately, that's why John McClane is able to win, because he does treat it with the right amount of gravitas.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, like, there is a little bit of depth there. If you want a little bit of depth in your Die Hard, it is there. It's not completely a shallow movie. It's really well directed. It's excellently paced. It's got great actors in it, and it does have a little bit of meat on the bone if you go looking for it. Not that you need to. It works in a completely surface level way, anyway. But
yeah. Can I just, this is entirely separate to the movie and just how I viewed it. I rented this on YouTube, and YouTube, you hover over the progress bar, it shows you like audience retention. Like it shows you the parts that people rewound to and fast forwarded to. For some reason, the scene where he is rummaging through the German's bag, the very first one, Carl's brother, is a massive spike of being rewatched. And I can't figure out why.
People wanted to read what was on the ID, I guess.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe that's what did it.
People just kept going back and pausing it so they could see I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine you going back to any of the lines, like any of those like little one-line zingers, just to be able to see the big moments. But I could not figure out why that one had such a massive spike there. But I mean, the ID would make sense.
Yeah. Also, I can't believe I didn't talk endlessly about Fist with Your Toes at the start of this, but I felt like we spent a lot of time in that first 15 minutes, so I feel like going out about the Fist with Your Toes would have been too much of a stretch at that point.
Just make it your best moment of the movie. And we'll just talk about it there.
I don't know if I'm going to quite do that, but yeah, I mean, obviously, Die Hard's it's such a perfect action movie that an entire subgenre of Die Hard likes was spawned out of it.
Yes.
So, you know,
tune in next Saturday to Extra Reels on Patreon.
Yeah, well, that's like a really low rate, but even like, you know, decent mainstream movies were Die Hard likes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got your Under Siege 1 and 2, you've got your Sudden Death with Van Damme, you've got a whole bunch of stuff. So, yeah. Some people argue Speed. I think Speed's a bit of a stretch. It's not really a Die Hard like.
I view it as a Die Hard like in that it's a unexpectedly competent criminal, which you can argue whether or not that's the main focus of the Die Hard. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Die Hard like is single location, one good guy trying to save people from a group of bad guys. Like that's Die Hard.
That's fair.
You know, I mean, that's not what all the Die Hard movies are. Like Die Hard kind of moves away from that formula.
Right. That's Die Hard 1. That's not Die Hard the franchise.
Yeah. So, hey, all right. I guess we can ask the questions then. David, what was your scene of the movie?
Oh God, what was my scene of the movie? There are so many to pick from in this. I got a lot of entertainment out of the Ellis scene, and also it's a very high tension scene because you know Ellis is one of those characters that is fully expendable. Like, you don't know if he's going to make it out at the end of that scene or not, and obviously not. So yeah, that was a very good one, but I think if I really have to give it to any one specific scene, I think I'm going to give it to the scene where he's taken the glass out of his feet. I think that despite the fact, you know, the action's all great, everything there is amazing, but like picking one of the action scenes is almost a fool's errand in a lot of ways because they're all so good. But I think the moment where we finally get to just sit and have him be like at his most emotionally raw, seeing that he's not sure if he's going to get out of this, seeing Al's backstory as well, and just them opening up on that, I think that that's adding so much depth to both the characters that have already been very well established. It's a fantastic characterization moment.
Yeah, it's really tough. This is almost harder than any other movie I've ever had to pick this for, just because I've seen it so many times. There's so many bits in it that stick out to me. I think I will go with it's kind of how weird how you count how many scenes you count this as, but like it's intercutting between two things, so I'm going to count like both sides of it. It's the FBI cutting off the power and the ode to joy with the villains, and then sort of the final punchline of the FBI thinking, "Oh, we've got them shaking in their boots."
Right.
But instead, you've got Alan Rickman's face in like ecstasy as you hear na 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 na. Anyway, there you go. So here's an interesting question: your MVP of the movie, because the obvious choice is John McClane, right? However, there is a very good argument for Hans Gruber.
Yes.
I would say it's really between those two. I would, even though there's a lot of good like side characters, there's a lot of good other people in it. I feel like it really is between those two. It just kind of depends which one you want to justify, I guess.
It's tough, man, because I would put Hans as like an all-timer villain role here. I think that like it's so difficult to put anything against him in terms of that suaveness he's got, the confidence he has in performing this. This is clearly showing he's intelligent without him becoming just a villain that just like says, "Oh, look how smart I am." Like, he shows his intelligence through actions rather than through just saying that he went to Harvard or whatever. So I really appreciate the way that they developed that. But then at the same time, I think the way that they developed John as this vulnerable hero, this guy who like is just doing his best here. Like I'm currently just watching the scene where he's calling 911. He's calling the emergency dispatch to get there. And just seeing him like freaking out here because he's being fired upon and he's just trying to make do here. He doesn't have a plan. He's just hoping that things keep working out. I don't know. It really is a toss up here. I think for me personally, I'm going to say John McClane. I think I'm going to say that having him be like this much more open hero and something that can spawn all of these later movies. Like, yes, Hans Gruber is impressive, but there's a reason that John McClane is the thing that sticks throughout the movies. It's not just constantly trying to recapture Hans Gruber over and over again. At least I'm assuming not.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I think there's an argument to be made that they try and recapture Hans a couple times.
I know they at least try to do it once. So, but regardless, I think that, you know, the way that he plays off of Hans is half of Hans's fun as well. Like, Hans does not exist in all of his glory without a John to play off of. I think that John still, regardless of the villain he's going up against, is still going to be a very well done character. So I'm going to give it to him.
Yes. It is tough because Hans Gruber is one of the best villains in movie history, and it still has to be John McClane, just because it is the performance of a lifetime. It's the character of a lifetime. It may not be the most dramatic or nuanced character that Bruce Willis ever got to play, and you brought up Sixth Sense earlier. I love Unbreakable even more than the Sixth Sense. Like, it's also one of my favorites. But this is an archetype that was created basically through John McClane. Not that there wasn't everyman heroes before him, there was, but like this kind of defined what that could be for a lot of people, and it's been copied, it's been pasted, it's been all sorts of things in the time since. So yeah, I think it has to be John McClane. He's likable, he's charming, but he's flawed, he makes mistakes, he struggles, and you can root for him through all of it because of that. And it's not that I don't enjoy an unstoppable hero. I love a bit of Commando or something, but this is not Commando, this is Die Hard, and it's a little bit better, even though I do love Commando. So yeah, there you go. All right, what are you rating Die Hard?
Oh god, why is this even harder than the MVP pick?
Well, you got 10 digits, and you can do a half if you like.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, is it really above a 5? Do I really want to give it that? I think, God, I'm going to say 9.5.
Okay.
I can't tell you exactly what's keeping it from that 10. I think it's just kind of a thing where I'm not huge on action movies. I can recognize when they're very well done. This is absolutely one of the most well done action movies of all time. I think it does just come down to a little personal taste for me of, as much as I love watching shirtless Bruce Willis run around for the back half of this movie, it's just not something that I would personally say that this is in my all-time favorite movies ever. It's great. It's a fantastic movie. But like, if someone told me, do I want to watch this, or do I want to watch even something that I would consider to be lesser made? Like, I don't know, like some of the lesser Christopher Nolan movies. I just like the Christopher Nolan style more than I would say I would like this. So something more cerebral, I guess, is what I'm saying. As much as it's pure action packed, I prefer something a bit more cerebral, but it's still amazing, and it's still going to get the 9.5 just based off of its ability alone.
Yeah, it's 10. I mean, I don't have to think about it.
Fair enough.
It's one of my, I don't know, I've got about 30 10s in my letterbox or my database, and it's one of them. It's been one of them pretty much ever since I started rating movies, and it's never really changed. It was a staple growing up. It's kind of when I think of what an action movie should be, again, taking out things like science fiction and like those types of modifiers to action, because action is something you can have in just about any other genre. to some extent. But when it's just a pure action movie, like, you know, good guys, bad guys, explosions, gunfire, all that stuff, Die Hard is the pinnacle. It is the best that there is, and you know, it's the A-tier action movie. So many action movies can't even dream above being above a B-level movie, right? Which is not to say that they're not great in many ways. Like something like Commando that I brought up earlier, Arnold's full of charisma. It's got great pacing. It crescendos to like just a ridiculous action scene in the third act. It's perfect, but it's completely surface level. It's completely just what it is and no more. Die Hard goes a bit above that and just has such a good premise, good gimmick. I there's so little to fault with it. So yeah, Die Hard is a 10 out of 10.
All right. Sounds good to me. And then obviously, I don't think we need to talk about this much. Does it make the cut?
It's a cut above.
Absolutely.
There you go. This is the highest award we give out on this show, a cut above. So yes, obviously next week, Die Hard 2, Die Harder will be gracing your your review screens or podcast feeds right in time for Christmas. So look forward to that. Of course, I said earlier that you can get bonus shows over in Patreon. All tiers on Patreon get access to the Criterion Cut, where we review movies from the Criterion Collection. Some of which we get rated just as highly as Die Hard does. So you can check out that. Plus, at the $5 and up tier, you get access to Extra Reels, which is a movie show once a month where we look at some of the worst things ever made. And for this month, we did have a vote on Patreon for different Die Hard knockoffs from the 90s. And the winner was a movie called Skyscraper. Not to be confused with the movie The Rock was in a few years ago, which was a really boring movie, by the way. But no, a movie starring Anna Nicole Smith. We have not recorded that yet. I have no idea how torturous that's going to be. But it's free on YouTube if anyone wants to watch it before a review comes out on Patreon.
That's not a good sign.
So you can check out that bad boy for yourself. But yeah, we've done numerous things on that show. So you can support us over there. There's bonuses for the other movie shows as well. Or if you don't like Patreon and you'd rather do YouTube membership for some reason, you can do that. Also, Patreon just started giving people the option of gifting memberships to other people. So,
well, it is the season of giving.
Yeah.
So,
if you have a friend or family who might like a Patreon membership to Male Fuzz Movies, you can gift them it for up to a year if you want to be crazy. So
yeah.
Go for it.
Go for it. Max out your credit cards. Top tier. $20 a month. $50 a month.
Yes. So there you go. That is the
Could
show.
I interject with one small thing?
Oh god, was it?
Just because at the end of the year this year we are doing a little bit of a special thing with Collector's Cut. Currently, right now, it's probably going to be closed up by the time we do Die Hard 2. But currently, right now, as of releasing this, you can do a little survey to help us do that end of year bonus thing. So there should be a post about that somewhere on the channel and also on the Patreon. You do not need to be a member of the Patreon to vote in it. Just to make that clear, anyone can vote.
Yeah, it'll be a free post on Patreon, or it'll also be on the YouTube community page. So, yeah, that is the show, everyone. That has been the Collector's Cut and the start of Die Hard season. And we will see how the sequels fare over the next several weeks.
You know better than me.
I mean, honestly, it's an easy enough season. Barring the last one, which I am not looking forward to watching again.
But, Pete, it's a good day to Die Hard.
Okay, see if I was just to tease this a little bit. One of the defining things of Die Hard is that he's in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? He is at a building. He's at the tower for Holly's Christmas party. Die Hard 2, he's at the airport waiting to pick up Holly when she's going to land their plane, and bad guys show up and do things. Die Hard 3, it's the city in New York, and bad guys show up and specifically like drag him into it. Die Hard 4, there's terrorists doing stuff all over, I think, Washington, and they pulled John McClane into it.
Okay.
Die Hard 5, good day to Die Hard. He goes to Russia to specifically try and save his son from terrorists. Like, it's a mission. Like, he actively travels like a spy to...
But see, that's where you're making the mistake. The son was the one who was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I just right away, the one thing that still kind of feel like Die Hard, you just didn't get right. I'm not looking forward to that one. I'm not looking forward to it. Anyway, that's the show, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. Keep watching movies. And if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.